Hello, everyone.
Testing.
Good evening, everyone. It's 7:01. We are going to call the meeting to order. If we could all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Jim Batson. Kara Benjamin.
Here.
Don Carmichael.
Here.
Kara Drumkey. Here. Lisa Hessel.
Here.
Sonal Kulkarni.
Here.
Casey Rooney.
Here. Okay, we note Dr. Batson is not present. All the other members are here. I'm going to review the agenda so everybody knows what to expect. Our first section tonight will be communication, where we have a lot of recognition that we're very excited about. We will have an invitation for public comment, and then we will honor our outgoing student school board representatives and recognize our new student school board representatives for the 2023-2024 school year. Following that, we will have our reports from the students' school board reps. We have a donation to acknowledge. We have some FOIA requests, and the superintendent will share some good news. After that, we will have our consent vote agenda. The consent agenda includes items that are routinely approved by the board with a single motion. These are minutes, destruction of closed session recordings, educational tour requests, employment matters, disposable of obsolete capital equipment, etc. These items have gone through extensive board review at committee meetings, and the documentation concerning these items has been provided to all of the board members as well as the public in advance to assure transparency and an extensive and thorough review. Items may be removed from the consent agenda at the request of any board member. Do I hear any requests to remove items from the consent agenda this evening?
No.
Okay, seeing none, we will move on to items that we will discuss for action. These came out of committee. The first 5 came out of the Program and Personnel Committee. The last 4 came out of F&F, Facilities and Finance. And then we have items for discussion, important items for discussion. We will discuss some board policies that will be updated. It will be our first reading. We have a calendar committee update. We have an update from the Grading and Assessment Committee, and we have a fiscal year 24 budget update. Then we will move on to items for information. We have a superintendent's report. We will share some board comments and events. Do we have a CEDAW report for this evening? None. And we do not have an ISB report either. We will discuss any future agenda items. We will retire to executive session for the purpose of discussing employment of an employee under School Code 5 ILCS 120/2C1, as well as collective negotiating matters. 5 ILCS 120/2C2 is the code that one falls under. Finally, when we reconvene in open session, no further action will be taken and we will adjourn. So moving back up to the top, I'd like to begin with recognition.
Thank you. I'm John Gilliam, principal of Vernon Hills High School, and tonight, Dr. Calentis, who's the principal of Libertyville, and I have the privilege of recognizing several students, a couple groups, and even some adults. So we're going to start with our students. I'm going to ask one of our social studies teachers, Paul Friedrich, to come to the podium. Over the years, we've increased courses, especially courses that challenge kids to do research, to do presentations, to put themselves in positions where they are articulating what it is that they've learned and how it impacts them. And Mr. Friedrich's going to come up and talk a little bit about one of those opportunities and one of our kids who has done an outstanding job there. So, Mr. Friedrich.
Hi, about a decade ago, representatives from Illinois universities, both private and public, approached the Illinois legislature with a desire and a need to have Illinois high school students come out of high school with a more critical and deep understanding of global issues. From this, eventually, the Illinois State Board of Education certification program of global scholarship was born. Similar to a program you might be more familiar with, the Certificate of Bilingualism. By going through a rigorous course of study and a year-long independent research class, students in the state of Illinois can receive on their transcripts from the ISBE the certification of global scholarship as a signifier to employers and to colleges that they do indeed have some formal way of marking a clearer, more deep and critical understanding of global issues. Here in District 128, our students in the capstone class work with the Illinois Science and Technology Coalition. So do, by the way, the students in the STEM classes and the students in the AP capstone classes. Through the ISTC, they work with an outside mentor all through this process as well. The ISTC hosts a student research showcase each year. Last year, one of our students, Liza Kalika, who is just finishing her first year at Northwestern University, was one of the top 6 students in the state elected and chosen to be a part of that Global Scholars Research Showcase. This year, we have yet a second student from Vernon Hills who was recognized out of over 1,000 applicants as one of the top 27 high school researchers in the state, and then also one of the top 6 who were chosen to speak on the student panel. This program is incredibly unique. It offers students a significant leg up as they move forward. And we're here tonight, I'm here tonight, to recognize the work of Mr. Heath Field. Awards.
Good evening, I'm Tom Clennis, principal at Libertyville High School. We're also celebrating some students tonight. And unfortunately, our coaches of this great team could not make it. There were many things in my life that my parents thought I might become, but coach of a math team was not one of them. So I am going to do my best to represent this fantastic group of students. We're celebrating our LHS math team for their 3rd in-state finish at the IHSA competition. And we're also very proud as a district because our friendly rival finished 4th, the Vernon Hills High School Cougars. So, but we are going to talk about the Libertyville Wildcats tonight. So we have a big team. Not all the students were able to make it, but many of them are here and we want to bring them up and honor them. So our first student is Eli Sway. Next is Jack Davis. Next is Ahan Day. Next is Sean Hock. Correction, Sean Hoke. Right. Next is Ian Lee. Next is Eric Lee. Followed by Omar Mahmood. Next is Shriteja Patel. Next is Shubh Varshni. and Eric Vu. Eric couldn't make it. He's home studying for his math test. And one of our super seniors, Audrey Weddick. We have late breaking news. All right. And Arman Haiti. All right, this is our whole LHS math team that's here tonight. Come on in, we'll get a picture with y'all.
Yeah, go up, go up.
Great. Congratulations to those students. We also have the opportunity to recognize a couple staff members here tonight. So two of them from Vernon Hills, really proud of these two individuals. I'm going to bring up Dr. Andy Young, who's one of our assistant principals, to introduce Laura.
It's really my honor and privilege to recognize Miss Laura Rash for the work and the type of work that she has done. We would be here long past midnight if I were to speak to it. So Laura participates or supports many facets of Vernon Hills High School. So myself, Ms. Nieves, our English department chair, Mr. Procyse, our science department chair, and then Mr. Mann, our social studies department chair, all work closely with Laura. And then we overlap specifically relative to her support with our fee waiver program. And to say in the last couple of years that she has knocked down massive walls for our students and changed our system entirely at this school is an understatement. The things that our students now have access to relative to curriculum, to field trips, to things that we maybe didn't see before or didn't realize was a need, Laura sees. And you know, for many of us in the room, our kids have, whether they grab cash from you on the way out the door, it's in their, you know, their account when they swipe their debit card. We have a growing population of students that are facing financial hardship, whether it's our newcomers or just our community that's been here for their entire lives. And Laura's soul and heart for these students is there in everything that she does. She spends hours with them in the lunchroom. She's communicating with families throughout the afternoon and evening. She goes above and beyond to make sure that our families have what they need. And it's not measurable. The quality of Laura's work for our families isn't measurable. And so I'll stop there, but Laura, we are so grateful for you. And yeah, you have changed lives and changed systems in the school forever. So thank you for your work.
Congratulations, Laura. And then I get the privilege of introducing this fine gentleman. This is Sean Woody. Sean Woody is a teacher here in our building and actually at Libertyville. This year, for the first year, he's commuted to both schools. Mr. Woody came to us 7 years ago-ish, second career, and we were fortunate enough to kind of fall upon this gem. We got lucky when we hired him. We hired him as a part-time social studies teacher at the time, but quickly, Mr. Woody kind of defined himself as a teacher who was dedicated to his craft instructionally and has really proven to be an excellent instructor. But more importantly, one who cares for and supports and really celebrates his students. Shortly after becoming one of our teachers, he started in a master's program. And I think the culminating project or a project with that study happened to be developing a course, African-American course. And we shortly thereafter adopted that course, African-American history, in our social studies department. He is the first teacher of that here in our building and also has championed that cause at our sister school, Libertyville, as well. Next year, he will be our lead instructor as we pilot advanced placement, AP, African American Studies, as well. So we see him as a leader in that area, and we're grateful for all the work that he has done there. But again, that's great. He's a great instructor. He brings a body of knowledge that we really appreciate. But again, what I appreciate the most about him is he is defined by his care for students, his students and his colleagues, and just his genuine kindness. You ask anyone in this place a word to describe Sean Woody, and it's kindness. And I really appreciate that. And we're not the only ones to understand that. He was nominated this year for the Lake County Regional Office of Education Educators of the Year program. And just a few weeks ago, several of the district staff went to the evening event, and Sean Woody was identified and celebrated as the Lake County High School Teacher of the Year.
Sorry for the delay. I accidentally left my notes at my desk area. We have one more group to recognize this evening, and I'm very proud that they were able to be here during the very busy last week of school, so thank you. But about a week and a half ago, the D128 Teachers Union had their elections, and we are proud to recognize the officers who'll be serving in these leadership roles for the next 2 years. So I'd like to call up Monica Former-Tova, now Caldecott. So some of you might know her by that name. As president. Vice President Mary Kate Schoenbeck. Secretary Paul Karnstedt. And Treasurer Nikki Olzelski could not be here tonight. But I also want to recognize 2 other people on the leadership team. The LHS building rep will be Katie Backer, and the Vernon Hills building rep will be Jason Rush.
Thank you so much, Dr. Herman. Together, I appreciate the chance to be recognized as the leader of the president of our teachers union. I have been in this district for 20 years, been a proud union member that long. I've helped negotiate 2 contracts, and I definitely will say that I'm glad that we have the chance tonight to address the board and to tell you that we definitely look forward to a welcoming and a helpful partnership between the 2 groups. I also want to recognize our outgoing executive board members. We had building representatives Ross Caton and Diane Nasland, Vice President Joey Regan, and the indomitable Dennis Duffy, our longtime union president, and we thank them for their years of service to our union as well.
Okay, thank you, everyone. It's always a blast to recognize all of the success we have in our district among the students and staff. At this time, I'd like to invite members of the public wishing to address the board to head to the podium. We only had one person sign in, so I'll ask Akshaya Karadigatu to step up first.
Hello, my name is Akshaya, and I'm currently a sophomore at Vernon Hills High School. My family and I have been proud residents of Vernon Hills over the last 5 years. So today I'm here to talk about the great event that occurred last week that was very special to me. It was the annual Teachers Appreciation Day, also called Guru Vandana. This event was organized and hosted by Hindu Swayam Sevak Sangh, HSS, on May 7th. Hindu Swayam Sevak Sangh is a voluntary nonprofit social, educational, and cultural organization. It aims to coordinate the Hindu American community to practice, preserve, and advance ideals and values of Hindu Dharma. The Guru Vandana program provides a platform for students like me to honor their teachers for imparting knowledge and wisdom to them. During this event, we as students invited our teachers and paid respect to them by uniquely celebrating the student-teacher relationship. Students got blessings from their teachers and honored them in true Hindu tradition. For me, this has instilled the importance and role of teachers in our life and appreciate their sacrifice and service to shape our future. On May 7th, HHS Buffalo Grove was joined by multiple Hindu communities and organizations honoring a total of 85 educators from 13 school districts. 24 schools, including 2 superintendents, 5 school principals, and 2 school board presidents from Lake County, with a total attendance of around 400 people. In 2022 alone, across the country, Guru Vandana has been celebrated in 71 cities, from 23 states, with 3,233 teachers being honored from 62 school districts, and a total participants of 7,634. Guru Vandana is an ancient tradition in India, which is still practiced today. It was a great opportunity for teachers to experience Hindu cultures. Teachers often find the experience exhilarating as well as emotional. We will continue our tradition every year and hope you can join us next year. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else that would like to address the board for public comment? Okay, seeing none, we are going to move on to item C. We will honor our outgoing student school board reps and welcome our new ones.
So we'll go ahead and read everyone's name into the microphone so those at home who are watching can hear and celebrate with us, our outgoing seniors who are off to do amazing things. And I hope you continue your civic action that you've demonstrated here as being representatives on our school board. So first, we would like to recognize Ariel Schifrin. Next, Sophia Marin. Hari Jun. All three of those students served the Vernon Hills community very well. And we'll move on to our our Libertyville students. We have Fatima El Shwame. Jasmine Lafita, excuse me. And last but not least, Sarah Wu. Again, the evening spent with us, the preparation of the board reports, you'll hear their final board reports tonight, sharing perspectives from the students' point of view on issues that were facing the board. Again, the feedback and the presence of our students at board meetings is just priceless. So please join me in congratulating this wonderful group of students.
So starting with our crew from Libertyville High School, we had a large number of applicants and a full day of interviews. And we are excited to introduce these three students to our Board of Education. They will be serving as our Libertyville Board of Education reps next year. So our first student is Molly Neary. Our second student is Louis Perry. And finally, our third student is Rokaya Elamanshawi. There may be a family relationship with a current board rep on that last Libertyville student.
But I was very impressed when I heard at our last board rep lunch that Fatima excused herself from the voting, although you participated in the interviews, just to avoid any appearance of nepotism. She did not vote.
Great. And from Vernon Hills, we're excited to welcome these three. Let me introduce Parab Arora, Maya Raval, and Ruhi Submaranian.
In August, when it's the students' first meeting, we will be doing an official swearing in for our student board reps.
So to our new student board reps, welcome. We look forward to hearing your student voice as we make our very important decisions. You may want to invite your parents to come because for the August meeting, because at that meeting you will be sworn in and there'll be another opportunity for pictures. Okay. So now we will move on to our student school board rep reports.
Good evening, everyone. Over this last month, Vernon Hills High School students haven't let a summer slump get in the way of their involvement across fine arts. After having won Super State last year, the Wind Ensemble returned to Super State this year, not to compete, but to perform at the Cranert Center at U of I as the honor band. Despite not being a part of the competition, the ensemble had spent a long time preparing its pieces and noted that the performance was no less stressful, though French horn player Jack Gagamov appreciated not having to wake up at 3:30 a.m. like last year. Senior Ryan Sarali said that it was really cool to play in front of an audience that could see our progress as a band throughout the year, and that he'll miss playing with the band next year. The Wind Ensemble returned to perform their Super State repertoire at the spring band concert, and being the last band concert of the year, it was especially meaningful to seniors. Senior Ben Evans said that he had a lot of fun at the concert, but it was also very bittersweet watching the senior video, knowing that he wouldn't be performing with the Wind Ensemble again. Anara Katzman, a freshman, said that it was great celebrating the seniors' hard work and that the concert went really well. The orchestra season has also come to a close recently after a long rehearsal process. For those who are unfamiliar, Amanda Handoko, a senior in orchestras, describes it as a great outlet for dancers to try different styles out of their own comfort zone. The process is meticulously planned so that each dancer can fulfill what they want out of a program while also preparing for the show. And to create this complete show, dancers spent mornings and evenings rehearsing a largely student choreographed program, with student lighting designers spending their lunches in the last few weeks of rehearsal to bring the choreographer's visions to life. Senior dancer Olivia Irvin said that this final season of orchestras gave her experiences and memories that she will cherish because it allows members to not only grow as dancers, but as artists as well. As a member of this company, she enjoyed dancing at Vernon Hills one final time and grew so much from the experience. And lastly, VH Media ended the year by attending the Midwest Media Educators Association Awards. Media submits short films annually to the competition, with the 7-day film challenge being a yearly highlight. Cougars took home a win from this year's MMEA, providing a positive culmination to a year full of film and broadcast projects. Nathan Klemstein, club president and junior, said that it was great to see what other schools have created and how we can take inspiration for future projects, with senior Lizzie Eitel agreeing. Overall, the Fine Arts program has entered its 2022-2023 coda with a rousing crescendo, bringing an emotional conclusion to the artistic high school careers for graduating seniors. And before I conclude my final report, I wanted to express thanks to all of the board members for creating the space for us to speak in front of the community each month. I've gotten to bring attention to a wide breadth of Vernon Hills perspectives over this last year and see my impact as a constituent in a unique way. Both in board meetings and outside, it's been an amazing experience to engage in conversations spanning from lunch offerings in the cafeteria to athletic successes to changes within the EL program. Thank you to the principals and the district office folks for discussing ideas and sharing data and working with all of us board reps to establish a student leadership connection. Thank you to Bo, Brian, Nolan, and Nathan for documenting our participation at every meeting and making all the text that these meetings require happen. And my final thank you to all the students and staff who lent me their perspectives and voices for a year and took time out of their days to help me monitor the pulse of the Cougar community. Thank you all and have a great summer.
This May has been filled with music, unity, and honor. May 18th was a big day for the Fine Arts Department with the art show that showcased a year's worth of work from AP art students and the cabaret concert. Senior Sonia A. noted how rewarding it was to display her work that she had been working on for so long and seeing the reactions on people's faces. She added that her AP art classroom was a very tight-knit community, and to see this chapter of her life coming to an end was very bittersweet. She did note, however, that if she had a chance to give her first semester self-advice, she would urge herself to start her drafts earlier. On that very same day, the choir had their cabaret concert, and senior Eaton Yao, who was a member of the audience, noted how wonderful it was to see inclusive fine arts students performing with the choir, and that it created a sense of unity on stage. Along with that, he appreciated the familiar, energized music. Senior Jessica Leff, who's a member of the choir, expressed how weird it was to see herself in the senior slideshow. May 19th marked the last day of school for the seniors. The day started off with the senior breakfast, and students thoroughly enjoyed the wealth of diversity of different foods. Coming together for one of the last times was very bittersweet, and following that, the honors assembly took place, where the chamber choir performed the song Ain't No Mountain High Enough. This assembly honored the achievements of the senior class of 2023, and one by one, as students went up to receive their award, students felt a great deal of pride for their peers. All throughout the day, murmurs of, "I can't believe we're almost done," and "How is this real life right now?" were heard. On that same day, the last issue of the TSP was distributed. This issue was mainly focused on the seniors, celebrating the journeys of them, and reflecting on this past year. Senior Evan Kim, who's an editor-in-chief of the TSP, said that by reflecting about the past year, he had felt a large amount of nostalgia, and then although he isn't normally a sentimental person, Kim provided that the best piece of advice he could give for students in journalism would would be to stay ambitious with articles and to not disregard an idea due to the possibility of there not being enough content regarding a subject. He highlighted the importance of staying curious and being open-minded with what stories you can find. And that seems to be the theme of seniors this year, as they are now embarking on the next chapter of their lives. Whether that be going to the college or to the military, the seniors are making their mark in the world. When looking at the college spread of the TSP, it was crazy to fathom that the people that we went to school every single day with for the past 4+ years were all going to different places. While this is bittersweet, this does not mark the end, but rather the start of a whole new chapter of our lives. I just want to take a moment to thank the Board of Education for giving me the opportunity to serve as a student representative through the 2022 and 2023 school year. It has been an absolute honor to be able to serve my community, and this position has taught me what it truly means to be a leader and what it takes to speak up for others, and that is a lesson that I will carry to college and onward. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Sophia Marine. We are just a few days away from walking across the stage, decorated in our cap and gown, flooding with nostalgia, excitement, or maybe relief that it's all over. It feels weird to think that we're finally here, writing the last couple sentences of a long, hard, exhausting, and homework-filled but beautiful chapter. Senior Jackie Gallego says she's ready to move on to a new chapter, although she's a little bit hesitant and unsure about how she'll feel about leaving her friends and special communities. Others, like Senior Raina Hill, are exalted to finally close this chapter and start fresh with new people across the country so that she can explore the world beyond this town and this group of students she's been with since kindergarten. Overall, this month was bustling with energy, sleep-deprived students, Celsius drinks, and of course, lots of visits to the library. AP season is freshly behind us, but already students are trying to forget all about the short-lived but seemingly long 2 weeks. Senior Addison Mooney is just one of many who spent all year working hard to prepare for these tests. And now that it's behind her, she feels a huge weight off of her shoulders. Annika Deshpande is excited to be fully immersed in summer break, especially having had a few couple of stressful weeks of back-to-back testing. Others say they only got through it all because of the protein shakes and extra pumps of mocha they got in their cold brew Starbucks drinks. Most commonly, students describe AP tests as energy zapping, so much so that they had to take the rest of the day off and even the next day off of school as well, although that to me seemed a little questionable. Fortunately for seniors, AP tests were the last major event of the year. Unfortunately for underclassmen and some juniors, finals are now completely underway. Daniela Gomez is just one of many trying to push through the finish line and avoid procrastination, despite how hard it truly is. Renata Heredia has recently been spending her afternoons at the library and taking advantage of resources like the ARC. Despite the school year coming to a close, the thrill of the spring season is at an all-time high as sectionals wrap up and track sends just a talented few to state. Becca Tron, who has been a state qualifier for 3 different sports, qualified for pole vault at a height of 10.3. I can't personally understand how she gets so high, even as a first-year pole vaulter myself who can barely clear 6 feet. In addition to Tron, senior Anna Todd and freshman Julia Rausa also competed this past weekend. Todd described state as a high-energy, neat, and rewarding end to her high school career, which had been marked in so much hard work and months of training. The boys' track team also finished a successful season, sending 2 relays along with pole vaulter senior Jaden Buford. Buford, only in his 2nd season pole vaulting, was ecstatic to secure 2nd place at sectionals after clearing 12 feet, especially because the season prior he had promised his coach from last year he would make it to state. This month was also a very important month because it included prom, a long-awaited, highly valued event that's been hyped to be a monumental part of people's high school careers. Addison Mooney said that overall she appreciated the experience and the special night, her only major critique being that she had to travel by bus to prom, which thereby prevented her from executing her grand plan of landing in a helicopter to the venue. Others, like senior Caitlin Ralph, thoroughly enjoyed it, from the ballroom to the strawberry shortcake. Others say the mosh pits were fun, but simultaneously a bit dangerous. Jackie Gallegos was just one who seemed to endure a minor injury after getting stepped on by another herd of stomping feet. Others said the weekend-long parties, Lake Geneva trips, and cabin excursions up in Wisconsin was a sweet ending, being that students got to spend so much time with people they may never see or want to see again after the big graduation date. This year has not been a breeze, and it certainly wasn't the easiest year of high school, as people always told me. For most, it was filled with late nights at the library, completing college applications, and trying to figure out large answers to questions like who we wanted to be, and also questions like finding the derivative or antiderivative of a function. But overall, we can agree that it was fun, challenging, and spirited year. Finally, I would like to flood the board with thanks. You were all models of what strong leadership and advocacy looks like, and you showed me that I too could be a leader. I would also like to shout out Dr. G for his constant support, encouragement throughout this all. And most importantly, the strawberry mango smoothies and coffees he'd sometimes bring Hari, Ariel, and I during our morning meetings. For so much of my high school career, I struggled to be assertive with my voice and my ideas, afraid that I would take up too much space. However, this role helped me to defy my own self-crafted perceptions and see what I truly am as a passionate and eager person. I appreciate the district for giving me this opportunity. It allowed me to see how unapologetically I want to take up space and fill a room so that I can be an advocate, a representative, and maybe even a community leader for a diverse palette of identities, languages, and cultures. I'm glad our school community is being shaped by the board that we have, a group which truly does care about teachers, students, and administrators alike. I'm glad that this district showed me what it means to be empowered and to dare to speak up. This year has been a beautiful chapter to write, and I'm so glad that each one of you was a part of that story, one in which I will always crystallize and keep with me moving forward to my future at UIUC and beyond. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Fatima Minshawi, and to start off my last ever board report, I wanted to also say thank you to our wonderful board members and everyone present here tonight for allowing us, the student board reps, to share our and our classmates' voices and opinions about school policies that we care about. Personally, for me, it started with communicating with the board about Eid as a day off, and of course, a lot of communication with Dr. K. And now I'm here for my last report. It's a bittersweet moment. It's been very rewarding, and I'm so grateful to have been selected for this incredible opportunity and to connect with all board members and to share our voices. Thank you very much. While lots of tears are being shed on the last day for seniors, we still have a few more days with each other, and here's how we're spending our last week of high school. Prom was this past Saturday, and in my opinion, it was an absolute blast. I'm so glad I was able to dance the night away with all my friends. The theme was Old Hollywood, and it featured posters and decorations from old movies and TV shows from American history, and the vibe was so thrilling, like walking in on a red carpet. That was perfect. Activities in the other rooms, such as silent disco and photo booth and board games, entertained a lot of students. I know some of my friends enjoyed a game of Connect 4, and the silent disco was so popular we ran out of headphones for everyone, but we still deeply enjoyed it. Since I visited the venue with student council in March, I already knew what to expect, but arriving at Stonegate and Hoffman Estates was a wonderful surprise. We had the venue all to ourselves this year, so there was not an anime convention. And there was a lot of space to hang out, especially outside, and people took a lot of breaks sitting outside, just like drinking, our kiddie cocktails. They were really fun. And we enjoyed the beautiful sunset. It was really fun. And yeah, the most popular drink was the kiddie cocktail. I had like 5 or 6, but we're not gonna talk about it. And, we also enjoyed the buffet style of food this year, which was different from last year. And there were options of pastas, fajitas, and tacos, sliders, and salads, and everyone enjoyed their food and immediately hit the dance floor. It was fun. Junior Carly Band says, I didn't expect to have this much fun. And everyone looked really beautiful. Dr. K rocked a gold jacket. It looked really cool, guys. I took a picture with him too. He looked great. Yeah, and then on our very last day of high school, student council set up a photo booth for everyone. And on Friday, during all lunch periods, students took pictures in the cafeteria to commemorate a wonderful year and have fun with friends. We also saw some of the staff members using it, and it was really cute to see. And it was also really popular with the underclassmen as they couldn't leave, like they can't leave the school for lunch. So they also like had so much fun there. For seniors, we took so many. I went like 3 or 4 times with so many different groups of my friends, and it was really fun. I have so many sitting in my bag right now, like photo booth strips. But anyways, I'd also like to take a minute to acknowledge our retiring teachers at LHS, including Mr. Rick Brenner, Mr. Sean Matthews, Julie Johnson, Andrea Lara, Dr. Deborah Kellum, Miss Judy Newberger, and Miss Melody Kinney. A lot of my friends talk about Mr. Brenner. He's really popular. I personally only had him for my second semester freshman year, and then COVID kind of interrupted our time, but his jokes nevertheless sparked laughter. I also had Mrs. Newberger as my counselor over the past 4 years, and I couldn't be more grateful for her. She helped me transition into high school when I moved here for my freshman year, and she also coached me in badminton for 2 years. I'll definitely miss her a lot. I can't wait to see her graduation too. She also reminds me every time I see her, she's like, I'm graduating with you. It's really fun. And then I also had the opportunity to work with Miss Lara this year through student council, and she was a wonderful advisor, and her work with all the school dances and service events is deeply appreciated. As for other teachers, I've had numerous friends who had them, and I've heard so many great things. They all left a strong impact on LHS, and I'm looking forward to see how LHS moves forward next year with all the new hires and all the new teachers. And again, I just want to say thank you so much.
Hi all, my name is Jasmine Lafita. At this last meeting, I really wanted to thank you all for the amazing opportunity to serve as one of the 3 Libertyville High School Student Board representatives. One of my favorite things about LHS, and I guess D128 as a whole, is the ability for students to engage with the school and community around us and really make a difference. And this role really exemplifies that. While still a high schooler, I've been able to represent the student body to all of you, and that has been a truly rewarding experience. D128 really created and fostered a strong culture of valuing student input and fostering our growth, and for that, I'm truly grateful. I've spent many of my board reports discussing the academic calendar, including finals, the end of the school year, and communication to students. This year was pretty tumultuous without much consistency between semesters, but I'm really looking forward to seeing more concrete and proactive policies for next year. This May 5th, we celebrated Senior Day, where all of us dressed up in our college merch and took pictures to commemorate committing to schools. It was a really bittersweet day, but since it was so fun to see where all of my classmates will be spending the next 4 years of our lives and beyond, but we also won't be together again as a class. We all got to take tons of pictures with one another, and we were really thankful for the CRC for not only organizing the whole event, but for also providing the many snacks and donuts that we all enjoyed. My favorite part was getting to see the map where we all pinned where we'd be going to school after graduation. It really embodied all of our accomplishments, both past, present, and future, and I'm truly grateful for and proud of the class of 2023. These last few weeks, the seniors have been participating in our annual ABC Countdown, where for the last 26 school days before the end, we take part in different theme days. Some highlights were Absent Day, which was essentially our ditch day, Kona Ice Day, where we were all served Kona Ice during lunch periods, and Teacher Day, where we dressed up like some of our favorite teachers to show our appreciation for them. The ABC Countdown marked a sort of final hurrah for our class after a really fun year of traditions that we've all told you about, like the Powder Puff football game, dressing up like Tom Cruise and grandmas on Halloween, and the senior dodgeball tournament. But, of course, the biggest tradition for LHS seniors or for seniors as a whole is still to come, which is graduation this Thursday at the Now Arena in Hoffman Estates. And boy, to say we're excited is an understatement. Preparations and emotions are really through the roof, and I simply can't wait to see my friends up on that stage and be there myself. This year's speakers are Peyton Adams and Sarah Wu, and I can't wait to hear both of them talk. I mean, if these board reports are any indication, Sarah will be a real tough act to follow.
Thank you.
As well as this, Marcy Langtu and Luis Correa will be reading names. To help us prepare best, we have our graduation rehearsal tomorrow to walk through everything we need to do before we walk across that stage. I'm also really excited to see everyone's cords to honor their extracurriculars and academic accomplishments in high school. After graduation, many seniors are excited to celebrate one final time with our class at Pinstripes for the graduation after party organized by Parent Cats. Although it ends at 1 a.m., I know I'm personally probably going to be so exhausted by then, but I still can't wait to be with all my friends. Thank you all for this amazing opportunity. I've loved working with you all this year and attending these meetings, even the ones that end after 10, and I'll really miss holding this position, but I couldn't be more excited to see what Molly, Louie, and Rakaya do. With that said, this is Jasmine Lafita signing off on my last board report.
Hello, everybody. I am the aforementioned Sarah Wu. So I want to start off talking about AP exams. The school and the coordinators, especially Dr. Albin, did a really, really good job making sure those went smoothly. I heard very few complaints about like the actual like way it was done, like the process. Of course, there were complaints about testing, but it's expected. And a couple people had like back-to-back tests, but you know that happens. And there were a couple of issues with AP Spanish, but overall AP testing went very, very smoothly. For athletics, we recently had spring sports awards where we honored like our academic, kind of like the student athlete academic award things where like you have to have a certain GPA, our 12 sport athletes, our 3 sport athletes, and our Newsome Award winners, Anna Becker and Cole Matalenko. And then following the all sports awards, there were like different sports branched out into different rooms. Then there were different kind of like awards given for each team. And I actually came from a lacrosse game tonight. We were playing our last game, our sectional game against Lake Forest. And I just wanted to say, I think it's super cool that I could like be involved in a varsity sport, but also be able to show up here. And I think just the flexibility that our district offers for people like me, it's super, super special. So I'm very, very grateful for that. In fine arts news, we recently had our art show. AP students got to create their own booths based on their sustained investigations that they did for their AP art class. There was an art auction, and it was just a great way to celebrate our art students. All the great work often goes unnoticed, so it's really awesome when we have our art shows, and everybody throughout the school day, or up until I think like 1 or 2, everybody just got to like trickle in during their various periods and see the artwork. So again, I think I've mentioned this before at other board meetings, but our art department is very, very like just so strong, and we're always so grateful for the resources that we get. Another fine arts event that happened was the Orchesis All Moves Welcome event. I am such a big fan. I went to both nights, and all of the dances, which included like pop, contemporary, and more traditional dances, were all choreographed by students. And there was a little senior celebration at the end, so a lot of tears were shed. I'm not even part of Orchesis, but I was crying so hard. And the highlight, and I think a lot of people agreed with this, was the Brokesis performance, which was an all-guys group choreographed by Maeve Devaney and Marcy Wright, and they rocked gold glittery jackets, and they like boogied a lot, and it was super awesome. And that's an annual tradition, I think, so I'm excited to see what happens next year. We also had our choir concert where the choir, full body choir, performed Lean on Me, which is also going to be performed at graduation. And Dr. Brown, the choir director, actually said that usually they don't perform the graduation song at concerts, but Lean on Me is just such a good song, and our soloists are super amazing. So yeah, it was very emotional, super great. And finally, to wrap up my report, I'd like to just express one more time how truly special D128 is. I moved here from New Jersey when I was a freshman. Super scared, super afraid to speak up, like not at all. And I also expected like to kind of just go through 4 years super fast and like not really be tied to the community. But just like the resources and the endless opportunities that our district offers, and like the support that our teachers give, like it just makes this place so, so special. And I feel like a lot of, I don't know, students and maybe even community members don't even realize how like rare that is to have a district like this. So I'm eternally grateful that I've learned how to use my voice here. And goodbyes lately have been tough for all the seniors, but we are very, very confident in the rising seniors to lead our school and uphold all our values of respect and hard work. And as Jasmine and Fatima like already said, the 3 of us have grown so much, learning to represent the views of students truthfully and reflect a really wide range of opinions. And we are just so extremely privileged to have a voice on this board. And again, thank you so, so much. Good luck to Rokaya, Louie, and Molly. You guys got this. Again, thank you so, so much.
So I would be remiss if I said it isn't a little emotional to say goodbye to all of you, especially since I think we as a board watched each one of you develop your voice. And from the very first report you gave us, they were all excellent. But to see the progress over the school year in terms of the content and the commitment to broadening our perspective with student voice was really special. So I look forward to either voting for you in the future or buying a ticket to see you in a performance in the future or interviewing for a job for a company that you are the CEO of in the future. So it's a tough act to follow for our new student board reps, but I know since you have such a great example that you will rise to the occasion. We look forward to working with you. And I can't thank you enough for your service to our board.
Here, here.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Moving on, we have a donation acknowledgement.
We do. It's something for baseball.
It is.
Sand Pro
It's the tractor.
tractor for baseball.
Yes, so the
And I
Libertyville
feel
High
like-
School.
I feel like I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge that the LHS varsity won their conference. and will- Yeah, fantastic. They will be playing their first regional game on Thursday, the 25th at 3:30 in Hoffman Estates.
That is excellent news. And we do want to be sure we acknowledge Mr. Greg Winters. He was the very generous donor of the Toros Sand Pro that will help out the Wildcat baseball team. So that is our donation acknowledgement. Moving on, we have FOIA requests. Dr. Herman?
Yes, we received 3 Freedom of Information requests this month. On April 24th, we received a request from Alma Miranda for any and all emails between Larry Varn, Tara Young, Ann Singleton, and Denise Herman with the words inclusive, diversity, or Latinx. Time spent was 7.5 hours, and the redacted responses were emailed on the 28th. The second was a request for specific student information from the University of Kentucky. We responded indicating that private information is exempt and emailed the requester. And third, we received a request on May 11th from Vince Espy of Local Labs, requesting copies of all records and emails correspondence with Lurie Children's Hospital from July 1st, 2022 to the present day. The time spent on that request was 4.5 hours. And those are all 3 of our FOIAs.
Thank you. And we will move right along to our good news.
Wonderful. And we had such a great list of people to celebrate at our recognitions, but we even have more here. So I will kick us off. The D128 Special Olympics traditional soccer team won its sectional and is headed to state. The Storm defeated the Independent Wolves 4-0 to take home the championship on May 13th at Harlem High School in McChesney Park. The team will compete at the state games June 9th through 11th at Illinois State University. Team members are Libby Karsten, Hayden Johns, Mackenzie Runke, Albina Giza, Charles Sampson, Christopher Morozen, Chase Miller, Joseph Mahler, Hazel Morales, Daniel Granados, Xavier Granados, and Benjamin Peterson. Next, Vernon Hills recently celebrated staff members who were the Make a Difference Award recipients. The month of May's recipients, and they were Danny Schmidt, Carolyn McDonald, Karen Clark, Kelly Reddig, Christina Kauptman, Sonia McGrath, Melissa Parada, Alyssa Gong, Barshu Turkman, Jason Rush, Paul Friedrich, who presented one of the awards this evening, Frederick Greenewalt, Kristen Schwartz, Tammy Fisher, Wendy Meister-Laura, Jen Shepard, Viola Butler, Gail Wright, Allison Farrell, Tammy Black, Brandy Saldago, Vicky Ream, Olga Homza, Natasha Rosenek, Pat Chelemi, and Jody Cusick. Next up, we were able to celebrate in person the recipient of the Lake County Educator of the Year, Sean Woody, but we also wanted to recognize other educators in our district who were nominated. We had from LHS in video production, Dan Treptow; from Vernon Hills in science, Alyssa Gong; from again Vernon Hills in science, Hema Rao Chowdhury; from Vernon Hills Math, Jim Pardun; and from Vernon Hills Physical Welfare, Bill Monroe. Next, we get to recognize someone sitting at this table. Mr. Bryant Kelly, Associate Superintendent, received honors from the Illinois Athletic Director Association at its April 29th awards banquet. Kelly was inducted into the IADA Hall of Fame. As well as Chris Davis, the Assistant Athletic Director from Libertyville High School, who was named the State Assistant Athletic Director of the Year. So 2 big accomplishments. And then finally, we have additional students to recognize. The following Libertyville students received honors from the 2023 National Council Teachers of English for their writing awards. Jack Birmingham received an excellent. Alexander Clark received an excellent. Molly Neary received first class, and Yvonne Gaydon received superior. And second, we had, again, Libertyville High School students who participated in the IATE Student Poetry and Prose Contest. And those students include Ann Barnes, Quinlan Hunter, Danielle Lamb, Felix Nakinent, Reagan Thompson, and Rakisha Tuparty. And that is all the good news.
Well, that concludes the fun part of the meeting before we start our business. But I think it's worth noting that we always start with student and staff recognition. It really, I think, helps focus us as we go through the business of the board of why we're really here. So thank you to all of the staff and the students and the parents that came to celebrate with us. Item 3, our consent vote agenda. We are looking for a motion to approve the consent vote agenda as listed.
Rooney, so moved.
Kulkarni, second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. May I have roll call, please?
Benjamin.
Aye.
Carmichael.
Aye.
Drumkey.
Aye.
Hessel.
Aye.
Kulkarni.
Aye.
Rooney.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion passes, and we will move on to individual items for action. First up is our agreement with Rise Aquatics Club.
This is our annual agreement with Rise Aquatics Club for the use of primarily the Libertyville High School swimming pool. Again, Vernon Hills Park District, we have an agreement with them to use the Vernon Hills Park District for our feeder programs, and then Rise Aquatics Club, private club, to utilize the Libertyville High School pool. So this is our annual agreement with increases tied to CPI on the cost.
Excellent. May we have a motion to approve the agreement with Rise Aquatics Club to use the LHS swimming pool, please?
Carmichael, so moved.
Drumkey, second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Carmichael.
Aye.
Drumkey.
Aye.
Hessel.
Aye.
Kulkarni.
Aye.
Rooney.
Aye.
Benjamin.
Aye. Motion passes. Moving on to the 2023-2024 Consolidated District Plan. I think we're turning it over to Dr. Sanchez.
Yes, so the Consolidated District Plan application, I know it was really small, but that was the biggest I can get it to print, is pretty much identical to last year's. There's only 2 differences. First is the addition of the Vernon Hills Community Parent Liaison that we'll be paying through with Title I. So that change or update was made to the CDP. And this year, the Consolidated District Plan includes the Bilingual Service Plan, which is typically a separate submission to ISB. This year, they put it in the Consolidated District Plan. We do have to identify several items in the plan. One is all of our teachers, the number of teachers we have at each of the buildings with EL endorsements or bilingual endorsements, or the temporary one. It has a special name. What's the special name of the temporary one? I'm sorry?
Provisional?
Yes, the provisional one. We also have to provide details on how we are supporting our transitional bilingual education program now that we have 20 students of one language at Vernon Hills, specifically Spanish language arts, how that is supported. And we also have to identify a date that we are going to provide professional development. And so you get to choose from a menu of options. So we have to provide the date and the number of attendees we are expecting at each of those. And once we have your approval, we'll submit it to ISB. We cannot submit any of the other federal grants until this has been submitted.
Great. So this is the annual ISB report that requires approval of the board to be submitted.
Yes.
With the new items that you mentioned. So I'm looking for a motion to approve the 2023-2024 Consolidated District Plan as presented.
Rooney, so moved.
Kulkarni, second.
Thank you. Any discussion?
Just thank you for doing it. It's a ton of work.
Roll call, please.
Drumkey.
Aye.
Hessel.
Aye.
Kulkarni.
Aye.
Rooney.
Aye.
Benjamin.
Aye.
Carmichael.
Aye.
Motion passes. Moving on to Equal Opportunity Schools. Is that you, Mr. Varn?
This is the agreement from Equal Opportunity Schools to partner with Community High School District 128. They presented at our last PMP committee meeting. Agreement to the board's agreement to this contract would execute the partnership between Equal Opportunity Schools and District 128.
Great. And can you just summarize what the purpose of this agreement is?
This agreement is to work with our staff as we transition into our accelerated placement policy implementation to ensure that we are identifying students who are who've been identified to take more rigorous course levels in our AP, our dual credit courses, and to support our staff through that transition as they make a different population into their classes with students who historically may not have taken, or it may be their first time taking an AP course, to be able to provide differentiation and access for all students enrolled in those courses.
Thank you. So this answers a need that was created by a new state law that requires the accelerated placement program to be implemented in our district.
Correct.
And Equal Opportunity Schools is a nonprofit who has helped with the implementation of these types of programs in other districts and other states. And they did come and present at our PMP meeting a couple of weeks ago. May I have a motion to approve this 2-year contract with Equal Opportunity Schools for a total of $88,000, $44,000 per year?
Benjamin? Sorry about that.
Go
I
ahead.
move to approve a 2-year contract with Equal Opportunity Schools for a total of $88,000 or $44,000 per year.
Carmichael, second.
Thank you. Any discussion?
I'd just like to reiterate that the whole point behind spending the money is to take some of the work off of the teachers who are going to have to comply with the law. And not that it's a bad law. I think it's appropriately placed. We just kind of were late getting to it. And so having professional help from an organization who has done this implementation before, they have experience identifying students and helping teachers with those students in their regular classrooms. So I'm a strong supporter of this.
But I do want to also point out from our conversation that the goal of this is for us to learn from this. This is just a 2-year.
Absolutely.
And that after these 2 years and us jump starting, this is something that we should be able to handle in-house. And because we're kind of at the precipice of being required to have it because of a timeliness issue, this is why we're outsourcing it. But our goal is to eventually bring this in-house.
Excellent point. Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Hessel.
Aye.
Kulkarni.
Aye.
Rooney.
Aye.
Benjamin.
Aye.
Carmichael.
Aye.
Drumkey.
Aye.
Motion passes. Moving on to a new administrative contract for the 2023-2024 school year.
This is our new contract for our new EL department chair. And so she was approved by the board at the last meeting, and now we are presenting you with a contract.
Excellent. I'm looking for a motion to approve the administrative new annual contract as presented for Jessica Fernandez.
Drumkey, motion to approve the administrative new annual contract as presented.
Carmichael, second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Okay. Roll call, please.
Kulkarni.
Aye.
Rooney.
Aye.
Benjamin.
Aye.
Carmichael.
Aye.
Drumkey.
Aye.
Hessel.
Aye. Motion passes, and we welcome, is it Dr. Fernandez or Ms. Fernandez? We welcome Jessica Fernandez to the District 128 family. Finally, coming out of P&P, employment of employees. We have a few employees.
These are items from after PMP. So in the consent board agenda were the employment of employees that were presented at PMP. On this one, I would like to remove the TBD on the social studies teacher. We thought maybe we'd have it finalized by tonight, and timing wise, we weren't able to finalize that. And so we will bring that social studies teacher to the June Board of Education meeting. But these are all recommendations following the PMP.
So which one are we removing?
The TBD social studies teacher at Libertyville High School.
I'm not seeing that in the packet.
There's no attachment for that position.
Thank you.
Yeah, on the personnel report,
It's on the report on the bottom for Andrea Lara.
Yeah, the replacement for Andrea Lara.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. Looking for a motion to approve the employment items as presented.
Kulkarni, second.
First motion?
Kulkarni, so moved.
Thank you.
Rooney, second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Is Emily Meister Wendy's daughter?
Niece.
Niece. Very nice. Nice niece. I tried. I know they will not be working in the same department, so the family connection certainly is not an issue. We welcome her to the D128 family along with the other employees we will approve after we have roll call.
Rooney.
Aye.
Benjamin.
Aye.
Carmichael.
Aye.
Drumkey.
Aye.
Hessel.
Aye.
Kulkarni.
Aye.
Motion passes, and we welcome them to the District 128 family. And I will turn it over for items F through I to Chairperson Rooney, because these are the items that came out of Facilities and Finance.
Sounds good. Item F, 2023 Lake County Indemnification Agreement. This is an annual exercise. Dan, any comments?
It is, you should approve it.
Okay.
So it is an agreement with the Lake County municipality that when there's development that they encourage, or they're really fine with developers having private agreements with us. But if we petition the county to withhold permits because the developer didn't hold up their end of the bargain, the county says, we're fine doing that, but if we get sued, you have to pay for it. We're not part of this agreement, and so that's really what it is. It's an annual agreement, and we've never had to enact it for anything, but it's a good practice to have.
Okay. I'm looking for a motion to approve the 2023 Lake County Indemnification Agreement.
Benjamin, I move to approve the 2023 Lake County Indemnification Agreement as presented.
Drumkey, second.
Roll call, please.
For discussion, real quick.
Yeah.
It seems like we're flying through these really quickly, and just to remind everybody, we've gone through all these at length in committee. So 2 weeks ago, we've discussed each one of these items. So I don't want you to think that we're just like rubber stamping everything. We have protracted conversations about each one of these items.
And
Thank you,
everyone
Chairman
is
Rooney.
welcome to attend our committee meetings that occur on the second Monday of every month in the Libertyville High School Library, where we discuss these items at length.
It's a
We
good time.
question them, we revise them. It is a good time, but be sure to bring a snack.
And coffee.
That is true. Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Benjamin.
Aye.
Carmichael.
Aye.
Drumkey.
Aye.
Hessel.
Aye.
Kulkarni.
Aye.
Rooney.
Aye. Motion passes. Moving on to item G, resolution to transfer interest from working cash fund to education fund. This is another annual exercise. Dan?
Yeah, nothing really further to add other than what's written there. We earn interest in the working cash fund every year, and so we transfer that interest out into other funds, which gives us more flexibility to use the money. If not, it stays as part of that fund at the end of the year, and then the only way to get it out is you have to abate part of the working cash fund, and so this just gives us more flexibility with the money.
Okay. Looking And for approve it, right?
Pardon?
And approve it.
I recommend you approve it.
Move to approve and adopt the resolution authorizing and directing the transfer of interest from the working cash fund to the education fund. Carmichael.
Hessel, second.
Okay, any conversation, discussion? Roll call, please.
Carmichael.
Aye.
Drumkey.
Aye.
Hessel.
Aye.
Kulkarni.
Aye.
Rooney.
Aye.
Benjamin.
Aye.
Motion passes. Moving on to H, schematic design for prioritized capital projects.
So based on our conversation at the committee meeting, I'm recommending to get your approval to move forward with schematic design for the top 3 projects, the LHS cafeteria, the LHS bathrooms, and the Vernon Hills LST office reconfiguration. So we would move forward with our architect in terms of getting a schematic design, which is a kind of a basic level design, but it gets you a much clearer idea of what the scope of the project is and a more accurate cost estimate as well.
Okay. Can I have a motion to approve the schematic design as
I
presented?
actually just have a clarifying question. On the LST offices at Vernon Hills High School, I'm just confused, but I'm sure you could explain. Under units, it says 1,000 units, and I just wanted to know what exactly a unit is in this case.
Yeah, so that's a great question. That should say square feet. I think it's about square feet, so.
Makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, sorry, with the units and the cost, sometimes, yeah, in our mind, I knew what 1,000 meant, but that's a very helpful because it was not written out there.
No, that's all right. Thank you.
Tagging on to what Don said earlier, this is the result of many months and many hours of work putting together a process to assess our capital projects given the monies that we have. And I want to thank everybody who was involved in that process, Dan, Mark, and everyone on the admin team, because this has been a long time coming. And I, for one, am very comfortable having a recognized process to make these evaluations that, you know, we as a board feel much more knowledgeable in how we're spending taxpayer money to upkeep our assets because we now have this process in place. So thank you again.
Yeah, this is everybody down the table.
Yep, that's why I said the whole admin team. You want me to name them all? I can do it. I don't even need the name tags.
We don't have to move to approve this, do we? Or is this because
I-
of it, it's an expense?
It's
Yes,
an
it is an
expense, and
expense.
So I would recommend that because we're going to be spending.
Got it.
Yeah.
And Dan, just to confirm, these are all of our capital kind of large investments. We still have additional funding for ongoing maintenance of things to fix and such, right?
Correct. So to frame it, this is these are the optional things for us to consider and this is the next step in the process of getting a closer look at these projects and really what it would entail. There still is a list of things that we have to replace, roofs, parking lots, those kinds of things that are part of normal taking care of our facilities that are also important too. That we're gonna, we talked to committee about taking a look at a broader picture of everything so you all can see this list of things in context with everything else as well. Because the reality is there's just not enough resources to do everything, and so we need to kind of look at that all together. And Kelly too. Kelly's not here, but Kelly was part of this too.
Yes. Okay. Do we have a motion to approve the schematic design for prioritized capital projects as presented?
Hessel, so moved.
Kulkarni, second.
Roll call, please.
Aye.
Sorry about that.
Hessel.
Aye.
Kulkarni.
Aye.
Rooney.
Aye.
Benjamin.
Aye.
Carmichael.
Aye.
Motion passes. Any further discussion? Moving on to item I, one-year renewal with Lakeside Transportation, our busing company.
The way it works in Illinois, you can start with a multi-year agreement. So we had, I can't remember what the term was for the original agreement, and then you can extend it for a couple of years. And so we had a few years of extension, and then you can go to annual extensions. And so our last extension, I believe, was 3%, or it could have been 4%. Now I'm questioning myself, but it was one of those two numbers. But even last year, Lakeside was faced with some substantial inflation that they're essentially catching up with. This is on par with inflation costs we've been seeing. I shared an anecdote. We were looking at an activity bus, and a couple years ago when we bought a bus, it was $55,000. Well, I was just at a conference, and not only can you not get them if you ordered it today, you wouldn't get it for a year and a half. We're still in significant supply chain issues. But that exact same bus now costs $73,000. So that's 30% increase. So that's on par. Like, that's me independently looking at something like that. So these are on par with what we're seeing. Lakeside has been a great partnership, and to be honest, there's really not really viable alternatives for you to consider either. So.
And you did mention this in our committee meetings. We were prepared for the numbers that we saw here.
Hessel, I move to approve a one-year renewal with Lakeside Transportation.
Carmichael, second.
Any further conversation?
I think I remember the state refunds part of the spend here, something like that, right? Don't we get some money back?
Correct. You get some money back, not nearly all of it. And it's different depending on regular education. Regular ed transportation versus special ed transportation is what the state calls it. And so we get on the regular ed side about 10% back. And on the sped side, it's much higher. Might be in the 70-ish range. I'd have to get back to you on that exact percentage, but you get a higher percentage on the special ed transportation. But yeah, we do get some money back, but it's not all of it for sure.
Good question.
I'm sorry, to piggyback on that, just to clarify, I was looking at those rates as well for parochial schools. Do they fall under some type of nonprofit situation in which they get to secure a lesser rate? Is that typically how it works? It was significant. Public school is public school. We have to pay the rate that's being assessed, but I just wanted to know kind of why. If you know.
Can you say that again?
Yeah.
I think she's saying there's
Carmel,
a line item.
There's a line item for Carmel High School. So a private school pays substantially less than we do per bus.
That's not what Carmel pays. That's what we pay for
got
Lakeside
it.
to transport one of our students to Carmel.
Okay. So I think you can see, though, that there's this pretty drastic disparity. So I was just asking why the difference, I suppose,
Much
if you
shorter
know.
route.
Really?
I believe so.
Okay, cool.
Plus, I don't know how many students we actually have that we would transport to Carmel. I can't imagine it would be much.
Okay, good to know.
Any other discussion? Okay, we have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Hessel.
Aye.
Kulkarni.
Aye.
Rooney.
Aye.
Benjamin.
Aye.
Carmichael.
Aye.
Drumkey.
Aye. All right, motion passes. Turning it back to you, President Hessel.
Chairperson Rooney. For discussion, item A, board policies, a first reading. We have several policies for a first reading. This is our cycle of reviewing all of our policies over the course of 2 years.
And these policy updates came from recommended by press. So our subscription through IASB. And so this is our first reading. We reviewed these at PMP. And we'll have a first reading, and then we'll bring them for a second reading and adoption at the June board meeting.
Excellent, thank you.
Do you want to mention the tweak that's going to happen that you mentioned to me earlier, Bryant?
On the
going
update to
over
our press.
going over them with press.
Yeah, so we are subscribing to Press Plus. And with Press Plus, they're gonna help us review all of our policies. They'll also, once they do that, they'll also we'll have access to be able to, when we make these updates, it'll be much easier for Carol Scoden and I to review any of the press updates, accept the press updates. But in order to get to Press Plus, we need press to first they'll do a substantial review of our policy. So we are scheduled to hopefully meet with them second week in June. Don has volunteered to help take the time for a session with the IASB representative. So Carol, Don, myself will sit down. She's got access to a lot of our stuff already, our current policies, handbooks, other information. She'll sit down and ask us more questions, go through those for a couple hours. Then they'll come back another 60 days later where they'll do an extensive review of our policies one at a time. And then when she brings those back, we'll bring those to a P&P, and we'll try to schedule that. So I look at some of the other workload that we have and start doing reviewing and adoption if there's any changes to be made. But that'll get us updated to press policy, which will make the work on the back end that Carol is doing and that I'm doing reviewing stuff will be much better. And I think then when we bring some of these items, there won't be some mistakes that we've had in the past. So
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any other
Absolutely.
questions about the board policies?
Just an acknowledgement. Thank you for changing policy 6135 to streamline it so that it looks more like us and not like we're a K-12 district.
Yep.
Good catch. Thank you.
And if there's anything else, we can still do that a second reading in our June meeting if there's anything in there.
So we'll see these again at the June regular board meeting where we will vote to adopt them.
Correct.
Excellent. Moving on to our calendar committee update.
Good evening. The calendar committee has reconvened based on the feedback from our last update from the board. Just to give you a recap, earlier on in the year, a group of students presented to the board regarding adding Diwali as a non-attendance day for students. And the board asked the calendar committee to evaluate the feasibility of this request. After the initial update, the calendar committee looked at the 2024-2025 school year, and the board requested that the calendar committee look at years beyond. This update will capture what has occurred and any updates from the calendar committee from that meeting in the last update. Looking at years 2024, 2025, and beyond, the calendar committee was tasked with looking at the guidance set forth by ISB that each school board shall annually prepare a calendar for the school term, specifying the opening and closing dates and providing a minimum term of at least 185 days to ensure 176 days of actual pupil attendance. In District 128, we meet those mandates by having 178 student attendance days, 4 institute days, and 2 grading days, therefore meeting the requirements set forth by ISB. Additionally, in District 128, we have identified guidelines that drive the calendar committee. My role in this work was to facilitate the calendar committee in looking at the guidelines to determine the viability of maintaining these guidelines. Guideline number 1 is that District 128 teacher union agreement specifies that the teacher work year shall not exceed 184 days, which is reduced if emergency days are used, grading days and institute days, as well as how they might be reduced in case of emergency, are contractual and are included in the calendar planning. Number 2, new staff will also participate in 3 orientation days prior to opening day. Number 3, contractually, the Wednesday before Thanksgiving Day is a non-attendance day for students and staff. Number 4, student attendance days shall be as evenly divided between the 2 semesters as possible. Number 5, that the end of semester 1 shall be aligned with the start of winter break, and that semester 2 shall end prior to Memorial Day. The calendar committee reviewed these guidelines to determine what if we were to observe Diwali and all other religious holidays currently in our calendar for years 2024, 2025, 2025, 2026, 2026, 2027, and 2027, 2028, what the outcomes would be. Using the following information from the state of Illinois, we've identified that the district must establish that a school closure is warranted based on an operational need or educational interest. While each case must be evaluated independently, the likelihood of high absentee rates on any given day for staff and/or students that significantly impacts the operation of a school or the school district may warrant closure of all schools. The calendar committee then began to investigate what it meant in D128 to warrant closure of all schools based on significantly impacting the operation of schools. What the committee determined, after consulting with administrators and teachers on the committee, as well as administrators outside of the committee that would be impacted, to include our assistant principals of teaching and learning. The committee determined that the following thresholds would be established in order to determine the district's ability to provide high quality instruction. That the district must anticipate that 90% of instructional staff will be present in order for normal instruction to occur. By normal instruction, we mean that classes will not be collapsed, combined, or offered in any large group setting, such as an auditorium or gym, that there is an individual substitute teacher for each class. In order for that to occur, we must have at least 90% of instructional staff district-wide to be present. Additionally, as it relates to student attendance, the district anticipates that at least 60% of students will be present. Should the district determine that these thresholds will not be met, then a non-attendance day or institute day may be scheduled. This determination will be made by surveying District 128 staff, students, families, and substitute teachers annually to determine our thresholds. Any non-attendance day and/or institute day must be scheduled when the anticipated low teacher attendance and/or student attendance may negatively impact the district's capacity to deliver high-quality instruction. Utilizing these thresholds, the committee is making the following recommendation: that these thresholds be utilized in order to determine any non-attendance day to be observed by District 128. This change in practice may impact the student non-attendance days or institute days that have traditionally been aligned with religious holidays. For example, if at least 90% of instructional staff and at least 60% of students indicate that they will not attend school on either Yom Kippur, Rosh Hashanah, Good Friday, Eid, or then any of those current holidays observed by District 128 as non-attendance days may become a regular attendance day. However, students and staff still maintain the right to be excused in order to observe a religious holiday without penalty. Those are the recommendations from the calendar committee.
So I have some questions, but I'd like to open it up to my colleagues to ask their questions first.
May I ask, what is the minimum number of days of student instruction required by the state for high school students?
176.
176.
And can you talk a little bit more about how you developed the 90%, 60% thresholds, please?
The 90% teacher threshold is based on if the number of teachers that we are currently able to cover with the sub pool that we have, and also anticipating any regular absences that may occur. So if we had more than 30 teachers district-wide indicate that they would be observing a religious holiday, that with the anticipation of what we normally have as the absentee rate for our teachers, would not allow us to provide normal operations for high quality instruction.
How many, on any given day, what's the percentage of teachers and staff present?
Brian, do you know?
I think we looked at, when the committee was talking about it, we were talking to the folks who manage the subs more from what's a high water day for you? What's a day where you are barely able to find enough subs to run the school, where we don't have to combine classes into a gym or some other extraordinary measure where learning could be impacted? And it was like 7 to 8% of the teachers being gone was a high water day for them. So this is kind of a 10% is really pushing the edge of the envelope. If 10% of the staff is gone, they're going to have a tough time coming up with the appropriate subs to continue learning as we would expect it. Does that make sense?
It makes sense, but I think that if we are possibly looking at taking something away from our community, we have to have very specific answers to the questions about how we selected 90% and 60%. Could you also talk a little bit more about the 60% student threshold, please?
Yep. So the 60% student threshold was identified based on understanding what our teachers would have to do if more than 60% of their class was absent, if more than 40% of their class was absent. ISB requires 51% to be present in order to consider it an attendance day. And so we started there and surveyed our teachers and asked teachers on the calendar committee out of a class of 25 about how many are necessary to be there in order for you to have regular instruction. And they determined that that would be about 15 students needed to be there. No more than 10 could be absent.
And so what happens if there are fewer students? Aside from this state requiring more than 50%, from the perspective of a teacher, what happens if they have more than 40% of their students absent?
Then they would not be able to provide a regular lesson. They would have to provide makeup for a great majority of the class when they came back. So it would prevent them from being able to have a regular instructional day.
I'm so sorry. Continue.
So I
Lisa.
just want to drill a little bit further on that 60% number. So there is some subjectivity with selecting that number of students, correct?
Yes.
Do you have the data about any peer districts that have moved to a secular calendar, what thresholds they use?
No other districts have published any thresholds for identifying these. We technically cannot observe for the purposes of religious holidays. Any day that we take off is for the purpose of we've identified that we are not able to provide normal operations.
Okay. And how will we determine the anticipated attendance on religious holidays?
Via survey.
Yearly surveys ahead of the next school year?
The survey will be administered to students during registration in August. We are not making any adjustments to the 2023-2024 calendar. At earliest, it will be 2024-2025. So we will have that data in August for our families, and we have already administered the survey to our staff.
So it will be at the time of registration. So more likely it would be the parent who's answering questions about anticipated absences throughout the year, correct?
Correct.
So it seems like we, from looking at the committee's recommendations, that we're operating on the assumption that all of the stakeholders value ending first semester before winter break and ending second semester before Memorial Day.
Yes.
if we're going to be surveying families anyway, wouldn't it be valuable to determine if our stakeholders prioritize ending first semester before winter break and second semester before Memorial Day over taking a non-attendance day, even though the rest, basically telling all of the non-Christians that they have to take an excused absence and miss instructional time that their peers are participating in to observe a religious holiday.
It's my understanding that that surveying of the community was done prior to the shift from moving final exams from being after winter break to prior to.
So that was a long time ago. What year was that?
That was 2015.
Yeah, it wasn't.
And I kind of had
pretty definitive too. It was very definitive.
my question was when you say 90% of instructional staff and at least 60% of students, you have some religions that you're automatically going to eliminate because you're never going to have 90% of, you don't have staff that are that that diverse in terms of what religious faith they practice. So for some of these religions, you know, the and one will always be a no. So that's never going, so whether you have 60% of the students out to, let's say, celebrate Diwali, they'll still have to come in because you have all the staff available.
Any one of those criteria makes it, if any one of those
So it's an
criteria is
or?
met,
Is it an or? Because it's
then it becomes a non-attendance day.
So it's an or, not an and?
Correct.
Okay, but the document
Correct.
has and in it, so I'm just
A-
asking.
And if,
Is that
correct me if
correct?
I'm wrong, Larry, it was,
Is either or, yes. We must have,
Okay.
if either or is met, then
Right.
we will initiate a non-attendance day.
and either or schools. So correct, if
At
not,
both schools. So yes, so if either
Right.
Libertyville or
Or.
Vernon Hills High School has a population that reaches 60%, more than 40% of our students indicate that they will be absent in order to observe that religious holiday, both schools would be observing, district-wide, we will be observing a non-attendance day.
I'm sorry, I don't think I followed you.
So the demographics of Libertyville and Vernon Hills may be different. So when we administer the survey, if more than 40% of Vernon Hills families are going to observe any particular holiday, but Libertyville does not reach that threshold, district-wide, we will observe a non-attendance day, even though Libertyville didn't meet the threshold because Vernon Hills met the threshold.
Understood. That's an important clarification. Thank you.
yeah, we have to allot for the differences in the populations between the schools, but as a district, we have to turn in one calendar.
Yeah.
We can't have a differential in our calendar based on the schools.
Sure. So I'm going to go back to the priorities. I'm concerned about asking all of the non-Christians to take an excused absence when their peers are receiving instruction because we haven't since 2015 asked our stakeholders if that is something that they prioritize over a non-attendance day. And I'd like to hear some thoughts from my colleagues about whether or not we need to reassess that data to make sure, again, before we take something away, not next school year, but the following year, let's make sure our decisions align with the priorities of all of the stakeholders. And if in fact, nothing has changed since 2015, then the decision that we make is validated.
I think one important point to make here is the purpose of this was not to decide whether we were going to take something away. The purpose was to find an objective process that we could evaluate our calendar construction going forward. It had nothing to do with taking something away. It had something to do with we need to have objectivity to this and data and numbers behind it, number one. And certainly, I I don't see any issue surveying the public on their feelings of when semesters end, but I'm not comfortable with it in the light of this or that. I'd rather know, okay, let's look at how you feel about doing finals after winter break, because that's really what we'd be asking. And how you feel about ending after Memorial Day, which has its pros and cons, then in the light of instead of religious holidays. I'm not comfortable with that.
I think that's a good point, and I understand your logic, and I agree that it doesn't have to be an either or.
Right.
Can we let one of our student board reps jump in here? Chazzy, did you have something you wanted to say?
Yeah, I think Fatima and I both just had something to say. So I wanted to agree with Ms. Hessel about what she said about having non-Christian students take an excused absence day. My family is Hindu and we celebrate Diwali every year, and like I've never been able to take Diwali off. I mean, that's just kind of like the status quo, and I feel like a few months ago, we had a really impassioned group of students, the Indian Student Association at Vernon Hills, come up and like talk about why we should have Diwali off. And I think that that is a perspective that we really need to take into account, that even though I believe that they stated it's like 10% of the population between the schools is Hindu, that's still a really big number of people, and we should be looking at these minority groups and making sure that their needs are met, just like we're meeting the needs of Christian students.
So that's an excellent point, and I appreciate you amplifying my question. The reason that the board responded to the request for Diwali with, we need to develop standards and criteria and metrics because we have a state-mandated number of days that we have to have instructions, and we want to continue to say yes to everybody, but at a certain point, it will become untenable. And what many districts are doing—
2025 is that year.
Okay, so what many districts are doing is exactly what the calendar committee's recommendation, and moving towards a secular calendar where, because of constitutional rights, we can always give someone an excused absence, whether they're staff or a student, in order to observe a religious holiday. That's constitutionally protected. But what the committee was recommending is based on what the board said, which is we have to have some standards. We have to have a rubric, thank you, in order to evaluate these requests going forward. Because, Eid was an important one, Diwali is an important one, but it won't be the last request. Right. So, I think it's balancing the need to really acknowledge and appreciate the diversity in our district with also having to have a certain number of days of instructional time in order to be legitimate.
Yeah.
And I also want to emphasize that as well, because then we also have some Jewish holidays off, and we currently have Eid off. There was a little mix up this year, but still we have it as a day off. And we're almost gonna get Diwali as a day off. So I feel like just taking away that now moving into a secular calendar would be like taking away from like just appreciating the diversity in our school, but also students know that we're gonna have these days off. So taking that away, I feel like it's not like good for the community. It's not good for the diversity in schools, because then we'll be just focusing on a regular like Christian-based calendar, like rounded around like Christmas and like just things like that. And if we're saying it's a secular calendar, that's not really a secular calendar.
I want to be very, very clear about this. The calendar committee did not refer to it as secular or religious. We referred to it as finding a way to get to a metric that we can effectively run school. Because again, we want to appreciate the diversity in our district, but we are also a public school that is required to meet certain dates according to the state and according to the federal government. And the certain dates that we have off, like winter break, are required. That's not something that we can even look at and say whether that's secular, religious. Those are required. So those go in this bucket. we are trying to find a metric that helps us establish a calendar that we can effectively run school on given days.
Yeah, I agree with that. You're so right. And then also I know that like some other schools already take these days off. So maybe just using them as references in the future as we make those decisions will be like an important factor. So we just make the right decision for our community. Right. Yeah.
And I just want to like echo what Fatima is saying and say that like we are like our district is majority like Christian or whatever, like that's not really going to change, but that doesn't like diminish the presence of minorities, and it is really important that we look at what minorities like need, because I mean, if we have a calendar that's based upon when more kids will be in school, that's just a Christian calendar but with another name on it.
Yeah, and saying
Well,
like 40%.
I want to say though, we have a bucket. This is your bucket of days. There's only a certain amount of days in that bucket. And we do have to figure out how we are going to disseminate the different non-attendance days. There are no religious holidays in our calendar. They are non-attendance days for whatever reason. What we're discussing right now is what is the rubric to attach non-attendance days to the best possible day for our students in our learning environment. So I don't think anybody's trying to be punitive in the form of taking anything away.
But the result,
It's an
the result, you
unintended
can't,
consequence.
you can't overlook the fact that it is taking something away, and we need to be sensitive to that. And we need to ensure that we have been very transparent and deliberate about the metrics that we have chosen in order to fulfill our state requirements.
Right. Right now, we're not taking anything away because we don't have the data. We don't have all of the required data to make these decisions. We're trying to
but
put
let's
the
be
rubric
honest, when
in
we look at
place.
those percentages, we know that we're not going to have enough Jews to not have school, and we're not going to have enough Hindus to not have school, and we're not going to have enough Muslims to not have school. So let's not pretend that the outcome is going to be a total surprise.
But I think what I'm trying to say is if we choose to keep, we have to determine how big our bucket's going to be. And that's what you said the survey is going to go up, right? Because that's our job, is to represent what our community wants. What is that bucket going to look like? And if our bucket needs to expand beyond Memorial Day, I would be happy to support that. And I think you're right, it's something we need to look at. But at a certain point, we only have a certain amount of days that we can play with.
Of course,
I
we just have to
understand.
we just have to be sensitive about potential outcomes of our decisions.
If I may shed some light, just as my own personal experience as both a student and a teacher. So as many of you know, I attended school in 128, graduate, a product of, if you will. And we did not have minority religions off school. It was in school attendance days. And I found myself as a student avoiding my days that I deserved to take as someone who was part of a minority religious group. The reason I avoided taking those days sometimes is not because I was not observant of my holidays and didn't feel that they were important, but it was because at the time the district was not sensitive to those of us who were gone, and assessments would be scheduled on those days we were gone. Athletic competitions, which I know you can't always work around those, would continue despite our participation at those athletic events. And it felt like those minority groups were being slighted. And so life continued in school without us. And I ran into this as an educator as well. I didn't take off on my high holidays as a minority religion because it was too much work. It was too much work to get a sub, create the plans, leave my students. And I kept running into this issue. So while I totally appreciate and think that metrics are absolutely required to determine whether these days are days we take, perhaps it's year to year, perhaps it's another period of time that we use to evaluate it, my real concern actually is what happens kind of district policy wise regarding those days. Do we say when we have a certain group of students who we know is going to be absent due to a religious observance, what happens with assessments? What happens with athletic competition? Do we excuse ourselves that day as a district? We have an ever growing and changing set of demographics, and proudly, I think it's one of our greatest strengths. But, short of changing the Christian-centric world that we live in, how do we problem solve this so that we can get the days we need, honor those who wish to take the days, and not make it feel like you're choosing between being in school and being successful and honoring your authentic identity as an individual?
So one of the things that the committee did a good job of outlining is, I'm going to use the word policy with a lowercase p, not policy with the capital P, to make sure everybody that's involved in curriculum knows what the extensive list of religious holidays our students observe based on the data. And please correct me if I'm wrong, but the other recommendation is that students who have any type of excused absence will have an equal number of days to their peers to complete work or make up an exam. So for example, Yom Kippur is Wednesday. Jewish students who are out that day have the same amount of time to turn in an assignment that their peers do. So for example, if homework was assigned Wednesday due Thursday, that student would have their work due Friday. Is that correct? So that they would have the same amount of time to complete their coursework as their peers. So I do want to acknowledge that some thought has been put into.
I read that and processed it, and I think that's wonderful. I think that gets us halfway, though, if I'm being honest. I really do, because I was afforded that same flexibility when I attended school in the district, and it didn't prevent a test from being given. It didn't prevent me from missing a rehearsal or this or that. So it just, coming from the student perspective, and also coming as someone who was an educator who dealt with the same, we can do more, I think, than to just offer equal amount of days.
I am familiar with policy language in other districts where it does restrict assessments on those days.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's something, again, the reason we brought this here is to have this very dynamic conversation that we need to have. This is a discussion.
I want to go back to what our original conversation was when we talked about this. I don't want to be sitting in the position of deciding which non-attendance day is more important than another non-attendance day on whatever religion. I don't want that responsibility. So if what we are saying is under the parameters that we have, with the dates that we have, it is impossible to recognize all of the non-attendance days we want, then our threshold question is not even to have this conversation right now and to determine, are those the thresholds that we want to continue as far as time? And I don't know how to get that data, but it seems like having this conversation is just kind of, it's a mouse spinning in a wheel, because we don't have the answer of whether we are going to extend our bucket or not. And I don't have the answer of where do we get that data. I mean, so I think that is our threshold conversation right now.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, what you're saying is this conversation brings us to a point where we need more information before we're ready to move forward. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, I don't want to be making any determinations of what are more important on attendance days. If the option is to extend our year and we go past Memorial Day, or I don't think the majority, I mean, I remember
like,
what
we can
that
do
looks
this
like
exercise again. I don't have
I
any
know,
problem with
but
it.
at least we do the exercise. I mean, I guess we have, that is the threshold.
Well, it's not
Are
just
these
that
parameters
exercise.
the parameters that we need to continue to abide by? And if that's not, then our conversation is a little different.
And if that's a parameter you're going to change, any of those parameters, we need to, because what's not in here is some of the background stuff that the calendar committee does, in that semesters have to be balanced. So just extending second semester by a few days may not get us to where we need to be, because we don't have any control over when some of the religious holidays fall, and or non-attendance days will fall. If more of them are technically school days in the fall, it doesn't help us to extend the second semester. It's not, you can't trade those days. So then we have to look at, are we starting school earlier? So you're not just asking the community, hey, are we all okay going after Memorial Day a few days? You need to find out whether they're okay with potentially having finals after winter break. Then you're going to need to know how the staff feels about that, how people feel about ending school after Memorial Day, and potentially starting school earlier than we talked about. And then you've got to discuss those, or at least inform our feeder districts.
Sure. So it's
because they're
complicated.
impacted as well.
It's absolutely,
Yeah,
it's
it's very
complicated, and I appreciate all the work the calendar committee does. But I think it's clear that we don't have to have those conversations if our constituents say, no, we want to keep it, we prioritize keeping finals before winter break, we prioritize ending Memorial Day, then we don't have to have any of those conversations. But I really don't feel comfortable moving forward until we're sure that that is in fact how our constituents still feel. I want to be sure we have all of the data, we've crossed the T's, we've dotted the I's, because it seems like it's not that big of a change, but it is an important decision. And if we're going to get it right, I'd really like to know that we have really looked at all of the data. We've really gotten all the information and we know what our community wants.
Yesenia, what's the best way, do you think, to get at that information?
Well, I think we can add it to the survey. I also think, so we engaged in a activity 2 calendar committees ago where we were all given blank calendars, and we used a year where all of the non-attendance days fall on a school day to try to schedule it out. And if we were going to observe the requested non-attendance days, our start date was August 4th. So we did try. I do think we can add it to that survey. We can add the start date.
What survey are you talking about that you would add it to?
So we're going to survey all of our families at registration time about what.
But doesn't this, don't we have to have some kind of idea before we're registering for next year for our calendar?
So the recommendations
calendars are a year
do not
in
impact next year.
Yeah.
No,
next
I
year's
know it's not
calendars.
impacted next year, but don't you need to have that as you're having, no?
Yeah, what's our timeline? Like, when
Calendar-
do we
I'm
have
sorry,
to,
you-
as a board, adopt the calendar? And isn't that a 3-year process? 2-year?
Usually, but yeah.
Okay. And that goes to the regional office?
Correct.
They have to approve it, or do we just have to submit it to them?
We
And is there a deadline date for that?
Yeah, I think we only have to submit 1 year in advance. I think here we do 2 years in advance because that's just how we've done things.
Oh.
But like this year, we did submit an amendment. So I don't know if internally we would like to set deadlines for that. I was talking about the survey that parents and families are going to complete when they register students for next year about what non-attendance days they would.
The
take
actual
off.
paying of fees and updating
No,
your
I know.
contact
Believe me,
information.
I'm well versed in registration.
Have you done that before?
I've done it a lot of times.
Yeah, I think doing it at registration will ensure that people don't skip an optional survey, because not everyone takes the optional surveys, and make sure they're required fields. So someone, if they don't want to answer it, there's a do not want to answer option that they have to select, but don't keep it optional because people will skip over it.
Mhm. So we can add the start date, end date. The calendar committee engaged in a process in 2015 about the finals, just because it's healthier for students in terms of like social and emotional health to be able to actually have a mental break over winter break versus trying to study for finals. So I don't know if that is something that you would like for us to include in the survey, but I do think that work was done in the 2015 school year.
It seems like that issue's largely settled
Yes.
all around us. That's standard. I don't know that we would even consider, I don't think I would support having finals after break.
Especially connected to one of our strategic goals being health and wellness.
Yeah.
I agree with you. So I think there's some work to be done on what are the questions? How do we ask and get the information so that we feel as a board we really have all the information we need in order to move forward with the calendar committee recommendations.
Okay, so I have adding the ending after Memorial Day and starting the school year earlier. Are there other areas you would like for us to formulate questions for?
Well, I think we know our conversation and what our things. I would defer to the calendar to committee to draft it in a way so that parents are understand that what we're asking for is moving forward. What is the priority? Ending before Memorial Day, keeping all current non-attendance days as is, or
Balancing
beginning
semesters.
school year
starting.
prior
Yeah.
to,
starting.
which we already start pretty early. I mean, but that's,
You know, I don't know about D73, but D70 doesn't finish school till like the first week of June. So, I mean, it is known to happen to go past Memorial Day. It's not that, you know.
No, I mean, I think with seniors, you'll have some challenges. You know, that's graduation is set a couple years in advance. Again, you have to remember the semesters have to be split evenly. So you're not just asking them, are you okay going past Memorial Day? You need to also understand whether they're okay starting earlier, because it could be either or year to year.
And it's reasonably even.
Right.
They're not always identical.
No, it's not identical, but it
try
is
to keep 'em as
very
close to
challenging to balance
90-90.
that and not start.
and include all of the upfront loaded federal holidays that we have to, observe.
Right. And deal with IHSA Dead Week. Oh, we could go on.
Yeah, I know.
Are there any other student comments that you would want to make
they're
before
ready.
we close this?
I just want to bring this point back again, like Miss Benjamin said, having an unexcused day is not actually ideal. Personally, I had 4 tests on Eid because the day was scheduled wrong. Like that was a thing this year, but that's fine. But I took an excused absence, sorry, and I had 4 tests and I still had to go to school because I couldn't miss those. So just keeping that in mind and reiterating all what you said, I agree with you. Like, it doesn't work. There were so many students, like people were coming up to me as I'm the MSA president, and people were coming up to me and they were like, why isn't Eid off? Or like we know what happened, but like they were like, why are we getting it off? You need to fix that, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I can't do anything about that. It's just, it happened as a mix up with the calendar. But just keeping that in mind, the students' reaction, if we take that away, it's not ideal. It's not perfect. It's not going to work because we already said we'd give the day off. So just keeping that in mind and keeping the thoughts of choosing between being in school or taking like your religious holiday off as an idea on the table is so valuable. So please, please keep that in mind when you're making your decisions. Thank you.
Yeah, I completely agree with what Fatima said, and I wanted to thank Miss Benjamin for sharing her experiences because they do echo mine. Like, I could take Diwali off as a religious holiday under my First Amendment rights, but I mean, I'm in like 4 or 5 AP classes. I can't afford to miss a day of school when I should be in school. It's just like theoretically something like that could work, but practically it really isn't the most like diversity inclusive option. And that's just something that I really do think the board should keep in mind. And I think that really taking into account diverse perspectives is a really important thing that I think you guys have done a really good job doing. I mean, look at our board representatives. That was really great. But I do think that's just a really important thing in making sure that minority students are still valued and that like their needs are still met.
Yeah, if I can add something, I understand that if I'm correctly kind of like understanding this, like you're making like the metrics for how, so like I feel like there's a lot of power in that, right? Like something about like 40%, like that seems way too high of a number. Like it shouldn't like be like 40% of students like I was, and I understand like the kind of like the slippery slope philosophy where you're like, oh, like if, there's always going to be somebody that, wishes that they could get the day off for their to celebrate their religious holidays and stuff. And like I feel like that's a very valid concern, but also I feel like if members of the community are actively like coming up and saying like, you know, like those that celebrate Eid and Diwali, like there's like just such passion and like there are numbers I feel like that would support it. So just like that's the whole like thing with like protecting minorities is like, you know, we're minorities. So yeah, just like echoing what Jazzy and Fatima said, like I personally don't celebrate religious holidays, but just seeing my peers and like the things that they've had to go through and like not really being heard, I think it's like I think we're already taking steps in the right direction. I hope that we can continue taking steps in the right direction.
Can I just clarify I heard one question that you'd asked, and I just want to make sure I heard that right, or if it sounded off. Of like what we're trying to find out is a priority in some of these guidelines. But one thing I heard was that how important are keeping the current non-attendance days? I thought I heard you say that, and I just want to clarify. So I don't know if that's the question we're actually looking to ask, or is it more about which of the guidelines that are on this page are ones that are optional that we can make a decision on, like so you know there's a lot of restrictions on here contractually or state-wise you can't, but dividing them equally, ending semester 1 by winter break, semester 2 by Memorial Day, those seem to be the ones that are, there's not really a state law that requires any of that. Those are decisions that District 128 has made.
We value.
Correct.
You know, so would it be really those three that we're trying to ask a question about? But just don't even ask this, don't just assume no one, so don't even take input on that, the
Winter break.
the ending semester 1 before winter break.
Correct.
That's off the table.
Just making sure we're
That would
clear on
conflict
what we're
with
looking
one of
for.
our other stated goals.
And I think beginning before, starting earlier and ending later have to go hand in hand from what you're saying, right? It has to be open. It could, right.
Right.
Yep.
Just depending on when the.
And making sure people understand that is we will have to think carefully about how to ask those questions because it's not an either or, it's this could go either way depending on the numbers.
Right. Maybe something like, right, considering that this is not always a static thing, you know, with our calendar, how would you feel rated? Just a wording.
Or like, how would you feel if
suggestion.
school started the first week of August?
Right.
Really, I mean, that's
right. No,
it's like clearly what we're trying to.
It's the
find out.
reality, but understanding that just like Don was saying, it may alternate, it may oscillate. So the nature of religious holidays in many minority religions is that they are not consistent year to year.
Yeah, you got to make sure it's not a leading question because if you ask that question, a lot of people will say, no, that's too early. But in reality, how often is that likely going to happen that you'll have to start first week of August?
You don't know.
Yeah.
You
don't know.
can't answer that.
Right, you don't know. But if you ask it in that way, it looks like every year it's going to start in the first week of August. And
It's a possibility. I mean, realistically.
Well, the other thing, we're talking about this, but the idea of for so many other things that are connected with our calendar, like our feeder districts base their calendar on our calendar. And the idea of we received parent feedback a year and a half ago saying that we came back so much sooner than the D70 and 73 students. And they said it was very difficult for their family vacations and other things like that. So we did adjust our start time. The calendar committee did a great job of responding to that. So there's so many competing needs in terms of what families want, what they need, so that they're honoring their time together and having, even though we're a high school district, we are trying to work in partnership with our K-8 feeder districts.
And pardon me, I may be making a connection that's not there, but isn't it logical to say that when we talk about developing guidelines for excused absences, that the flexible use of time will afford a lot more opportunities for students and teachers to make up work or make up instructional time that's lost from taking an excused religious absence. Right now, our
Potentially.
our schedule is somewhat limited in terms of when
Yeah.
makeup instruction, makeup exams are available.
I think one of the things, and Dr. Kalinis is on that team, as are some of the other people, but one of the things that has been brought forward as a need is to try and have some flexible time during the school day for makeups, for retest, for additional instruction. We just don't know what form that might be taking.
And it all comes together in this grand mix of, we've got the grading and assessment updates that are taking place, and we've got the calendar committee that's making recommendations, and we've got how we schedule our school day, and all of those things dovetail nicely together, but just not yet.
I would like to say to our students, thank you for being here because you're witnessing a messy problem. And I'd like to thank the teachers for being here because you're watching the mess. And now you, like back in the day, you would just find out. So thank you so much for being here. And it's just not an easy one. And I appreciate that we have these protracted conversations. And I'm thankful to the committee for doing the legwork to begin with.
And if I may also add, I think this is a good illustration of there are some situations where you just simply can't make everyone happy, right? And it's something that we deal with month to month, where we have these discussions and practicalities sometimes bubble to the surface over what really, makes the smaller interests happy sometimes. So yeah, it's a toughie.
On that excellent note, Dr. Herman, was there anything that you wanted to add before we move on? Calendar committee, anything that we haven't covered that you'd like to add? Okay, thank you for that very rich and difficult discussion, everyone. Moving on to the grading and assessment update.
Well, I think grading and assessment is going to be a breeze after that. So thank you for having us tonight. The D128 Grading and Assessment Innovation Team has been hard at work since the fall of 2022, and tonight we are here to propose a D128 Grading and Assessment purpose statement along with belief statements and parameters in 6 areas that we believe will help D128 provide consistency in grading and assessment. Along with a recommendation for a pilot in 2023 that will help us gather feedback and make adjustments to the parameters before we implement district-wide in the fall of 2024. So we were a very fortunate team in that we had a diverse group of stakeholders on our team. There are 25 of us, and there are teachers as well as department chairs, our associate principals for teaching and learning, 1 principal and 3 district administrators on the committee. We have several of them here. We have Ms. Nieves and Mr. Tooley with us tonight. We also have Mr. Friedrich is going to help us present, Charlotte, and Dr. Gilliam. And we would like to give a very special thanks to Ms. Samantha Phillips, who took on a leadership role in this innovation team as part of her internship. So we're very happy that she was able to do that, and kind of bummed that her internship is going to be over and she'll be moving on. So maybe the internship focus will shift. And we were also very fortunate to receive feedback and guidance from a group of D128 parents. They participated in a focus group that was held on April 6th, and their perspective and valuable insight informed our work.
There's a bunch of teachers there too.
Yes.
They're not just parents, they're also teachers.
Correct.
Yes.
That's good.
And so I will pass it along to Ms. Samantha Phillips.
All right, so as Dr. Sanchez said, I did a lot of this work in the capacity of my administrative internship, and it was a really valuable experience. Dr. Colentis once told me that to be a good administrator, you need to have the head, the heart, and the gut. And going through grading and assessment and these tough discussions definitely helped me develop that. So it was a good opportunity to do that. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about where we've been so far, how we got to this document that you have in front of you today, and where we're planning to go next. So we started in September by gathering data. There was an all-staff survey and department focus groups, and this data really helped us to see the landscape of the grading practices that are in place at District 128, and more importantly, the beliefs behind them. So when you look at the quantitative data, we had an opportunity to dig into that as a committee. When you look at that quantitative data, what you'll see is that there is a lack of consensus, right? The responses were very split. But when you look at the qualitative data and look at the reasons behind the answers that teachers had, there was a lot more consensus to be found. So for example, participation. When we asked the question, should a participation grade be in the overall student's cumulative grade? Many teachers said no, because that's not a core standard that I teach, right? But then other teachers said, yes, that is directly applicable to core standards in my content area, for example, PE or other performance areas, right? So that really led us to think about the why behind our practices. So as we go through this tonight, you're going to see us talk a lot about belief statements, and that's because that's where we found more consensus, and that helped us identify those parameters that would drive implementation. So from that data, we then moved into a shared learning experience, which helped give us sort of a common understanding of grading and assessment best practices as they exist today. And it gave us a common foundation for our discussions. And then November through May, that's where the hard work really happened. That's where we met as a committee 9 times, one time for 8 hours. It was, Yesenia made sure that we had pizza that day. We really appreciated that. And we really dug in and analyzed data and looked at the best practice. There's a lot of writing about grading, and we dug into those best practices. We looked at sample policies from neighboring districts, and then also just high-ranking districts from across the United States, and looked at what do we think will work within D128, where might we need to make some tweaks. And then from there, we wrote a document. I'll tell you a little bit about that writing process as well. And then we are now moving into the pilot team selection. So last Wednesday, our department supervisors rolled out and shared more about the grading and assessment policy with our teachers. And naturally, teachers had a lot of questions. So Dr. Sanchez and Charlotte, they sent out a follow-up email with frequently asked questions and examples and non-examples. And then later this week, teachers are going to be meeting with other teachers on the committee to answer those questions. So there's a lot of discussion happening, some tough conversations along the way, but there's a lot of discussion happening of who's going to be on these pilot teams and what is that going to look like. So it's a complex discussion where it stands right now. So as far as the writing process, I definitely leaned into my English teacher experience as we were talking about and working through the writing process. And it was very collaborative. We did a lot of writing and revising again. And we ultimately started by defining a purpose statement, which would act as sort of our North Star, right? We asked the question, what do we want to communicate through grading to to colleges, to counselors, to family members? When you look at a student's transcript, what does that letter grade mean? And that helped us define our purpose statement, which we'll be sharing with you tonight. From there, we thought about Joe Feldman's work, and we asked ourselves, because Joe Feldman has his pillars, what are our pillars? What are the belief statements that we can get behind to drive implementation of a framework? And that helped us to identify some parameters of what would we like to see teachers do consistently across the board. And we really worked to find a balance between consistency for the student experience and autonomy that allows teachers to do what they need to do in the classroom for their own content areas and levels. And I think we struck the right balance, but I think that piloting is really the only way to know. As we were defining those parameters, we specifically looked at the the impact that it would have on students, each of the parameters, what it would require from teachers to implement, and then what needs we would have from the system, which we'll also share with you tonight, to make sure that we weren't just jumping into, these are the best practices that are recommended by experts. We looked at our system, our students, our teachers, and what we would need to do to implement it with efficacy. And you'll see this chart here. We actually went through for each of the parameters a process where we discussed, we had like green, yellow, and red cards. I was really, really leaning into my English teacher mode at that point. And for each of the parameters, we voted to green light it, yellow light it, we needed to slow down and talk about it more, or red light it, we're not ready to pursue this. And for all the parameters that were put into this statement, or this grading framework, the average amount was 92% green, right? And what I want to note here is that every person's voice on that committee is important, and it was not unanimous, right? So those are the considerations we're really thinking about and carrying with us as we go into the pilot, because those concerns are valid, and we need to attend to those as we're implementing this to make sure that we solve problems accordingly. So where we're headed next, we've got the pilot team course implementation next year. So we're going to be, we've got course teams that are in the process of being selected that will implement all of the policies or all of the parameters. We're going to be collecting feedback, implementing professional development along the way to support those pilot course teams. And then from that feedback, we'll have an idea of what we need to tweak before we launch it district-wide, and what sort of professional development we can offer through our D128 university courses over the summer to help everybody if they'd like to prepare for the district-wide implementation in the fall. And then our students and families are also really important stakeholders here, so we will not be skipping them, right, as it relates to getting feedback. So when we launch the pilot, we'll have a baseline data collection, first semester, second semester, and then also before we launch into the district-wide implementation as well. We'll make sure that we're collecting that data and feedback and sharing that and solving problems and making tweaks accordingly.
So as Ms. Phillips mentioned, we started with our purpose statement, and this served as our North Star, and everything that we decided stemmed from here. So this is our D128 purpose statement for grading and assessment. In District 128, we believe the purpose of grading is to provide an understanding of students' individual academic achievement. Students' knowledge, skills, and application of course standards will be measured through course activities and assessments. From the purpose statement, then we developed our pillars and what we started calling belief statements. Each belief statement then became a list of certain parameters. What does it actually look like? What are we going to see when it is implemented? As we discussed those parameters, consistency seemed to come through everything. So when we really got down to writing the belief statements and the parameters that followed, consistency was such a theme through everything that we talked about. So consistency is one of our beliefs, and it was a huge, huge piece of everything we discussed. It doesn't have its own parameters because it's part of all the other parameters that we wrote. So consistency, belief statement says, consistency within school course teams is essential to ensure that all students receive a fair and equitable learning experience. Consistency will be achieved through regular communication, collaboration, and coordination among team members to develop shared goals, teaching strategies, and assessment methods. All school course teams will consistently implement practices as outlined in the parameters. The next belief statement is assessment and accuracy. Students' grades must accurately reflect their progress toward course standards. To ensure accuracy, all assessments will purposefully measure a student's demonstration of their knowledge, skills, and/or application of essential course standards. Several parameters come under this belief statement. Essential course standards are accurately measured through effective assessment practices. School course teams will agree upon a grade calculation formula using the formula that you see in those bullets about in the middle of the slide. Summative assessments worth between 80 to 100% of the grade, coursework worth between 0 to 20% of the grade. And school course teams may include a final exam or culminating experience worth a maximum of 15% of the overall semester grade. The next belief statement is regular, timely, and transparent communication. Regular, timely, transparent communication is essential to the learning process. For each progress report, teachers will update the gradebook to reflect student progress toward essential course standards. And the parameters falling under this belief statement: school course teams will determine how frequently Power Teacher will be updated, and teachers will outline the type and frequency of feedback in their course syllabus. Assignments should reference course standards, and what that simply means is, rather than in the gradebook writing, this is quiz number 2, writing a title for what was that quiz about. And course syllabi will outline grading practices.
Our next belief statement is with grading scales. No single letter grade within a grading scale should be vastly overrepresented in the calculation of a student's grade. In explanation, an F representing a range of 0 to 59%, whereas every other grade represents only 10% on that same scale. Thus, the use of an equidistant grading scale is the most equitable means to measure and report student progress. So the pilot teams, for example, will have a number of different equidistant scales to choose from. They're listed up there. We don't need to go into the details of what they all mean, but that's part of what the professional development will get at for the pilot teams and for later full district implementation. Individual course teams can choose whichever equidistant scale they want, as long as everybody on the course team is using that same equidistant scale. The 40 to 100 scale is just represented over there in a bit more detail. One of the questions becomes for a lot of teachers, well, what happens when someone doesn't turn something in? The 40 to 100 scale essentially provides a 10% grading range, like every other letter grade, to represent something that's not submitted, a U grade or an I grade, an incomplete or unsubmitted, right? So that unsubmitted work, instead of being 50% lower than every other possible grade, is still only taking up 10% of the grading scale, just like every other letter grade. Next belief statement is on behavior and human skills. Fostering and supporting positive behavior and human skills are essential to a student's broader development as a valuable community member. These skills are also essential for the development of effective classroom environments, as well as a supportive and welcoming overall school culture. However, they do not always reflect student academic achievement. So to include behavior, human skills in a semester grade, those skills must be clearly attached to course standards. Behavioral expectations will also need to be clearly outlined. I think most teachers already do this, clearly outlined in their course syllabus. So yes, behavior can affect a grade, but there has to be a clear standard in the course that that's attached to. Examples are, for example, in performance-based courses or safety regulations, perhaps in a foods class kitchen or in a chemistry class lab. Those safety considerations are certainly part of the class standards. Therefore, behavior that leads to those effective behaviors can certainly become part of the end grade. So again, behavior will be dealt with, but in terms of grade-wise, it has to be attached to core standards. Next belief statement is on academic dishonesty. Academic dishonesty is taken very seriously. Students are expected to exhibit the traits of trustworthiness, responsibility, thank you, and fairness. Students who engage in academic dishonesty steal ideas from others and fail to think and learn for themselves. Grades should emphasize learning rather than behavior or compliance. Therefore, consequences for academic dishonesty will be issued by the administration and are not automatically reflected on the student's grade. Additionally, students who have academic dishonesty in their discipline record may incur extracurricular consequences in explanation, codes of conduct violations, ineligible for honors programs like NHS, etc. So again, in this case, academic dishonesty can certainly impact the student's grade, but not necessarily. If, for example, there's a summative grade that is eligible for a retake, in the case of academic dishonesty, the student would be allowed to take the retake version of that. But again, to emphasize, not every summative assessment is eligible for a retake, right? So therefore, not every instance of academic dishonesty would be eligible to receive a grade. Again, it's based on the individual course teams and the needs of the team class as a whole.
Good. Okay. Then our final belief statement really is not something that's new. We talk about reassessment, which in the district we've also called retake and redo. A policy that or a practice that came out of the pandemic when we became acutely aware that students were their instruction and therefore learning was interrupted by all sorts of unrelated circumstances to the learning environment. And so we developed kind of a belief that while learning is a constant, time is the variable. And that is a belief statement that we have continued post-pandemic now and still hold to today. So again, the idea is that all students held to the same standards, but some need more time to demonstrate achievement in learning. And therefore, they're given multiple opportunities to demonstrate knowledge, skill, so forth on essential core standards. So when we look at the parameters, we'll be quite honest with you, they do not change from where they were coming into this school year. And that's not because we necessarily believe in every one of those parameters in the sense that it's complete consensus, but we know we can move into a pilot program with these parameters in place, which don't create more change for our teachers who are going to be dealing with a lot of change in the rest of these parameters, yet understanding it's part of the pilot, and with feedback, we could change some of these. So I won't spend a lot of time on these parameters, but just mention them in few. That first bullet talks about teachers needing to be able to publish and communicate these practices in a course syllabus. The second has to do with creating reassessment opportunities that are parallel to the original, so not necessarily the same assessment, not necessarily even the same format, but one that is parallel in both complexity and difficulty, and of course the standards being assessed. This next bullet has to do with students being asked to fulfill specific criteria in order to be eligible for reassessment. You students know that sometimes you have teachers that say, okay, you may reassess, but you must do these steps in order to either prove to me that you're taking this seriously, this isn't just some blow-off kind of reassessment, or you've demonstrated some sense of learning headed into the reassessment. And while again, that bullet even by itself has a lot of different beliefs in terms of how to interpret that, but we've allowed that flexibility for teachers. Reassessments may be subject to time constraints. That has primarily to do end of the semester. Obviously, we run into final exams. Students don't have time for reassessment, and we're not asking our teachers to create out of nowhere time for reassessments. And then, of course, the last one is really just a kid-friendly point. Use flexibility when possible and reassessment. So again, that policy or that part of our procedure is not changing. We've talked already tonight about this pilot. So just a few bullets about this pilot. Our hope is that we get many course teams to volunteer for the pilot. Our ask is that every department has at least a course team participating in the pilot. Our hope would be that each department would have several. And of course, a course team is just multiple teachers teaching the exact same section of a course. Although we are allowing for partial. Really, in the end, any individual teacher can be a part of the pilot. We want their feedback. We want them playing with these parameters and giving us feedback on how they and their students are working with them. So any individual teacher, and then if 3 individual teachers form some part of a course team, but they don't have all of their course team members involved, can they participate? Of course they can. And we would encourage them to work together as at least part of a course team or 3 individual teachers. And like we said, any teacher not involved in the pilot, that's okay, but we will move forward with a full implementation in the 24-25 school year. Just real quickly, we've identified certain needs that really in some part have driven this idea of a pilot. There's been some conversation, why don't we just do all of this right now? Or why don't we just do part of this all right now? And the reality is we identified enough needs in our system that to try to force that onto every teacher right now really isn't what we think is healthy for our system. So we've identified some of these needs. We've talked about using assessments in appropriate ways and creating appropriate assessments. That's what the D128 blueprint is, something that was created with Dr. Fisher's help in the mid-2010s. But a document we probably need to go back to now that we're post-pandemic, work on those quality of assessments. Obviously, the equidistant grading scale is something that needs time to both understand and implement. Grade calculation best practices, feedback best practices. When we talk about teachers giving feedback, that doesn't all mean that it goes into PowerSchool. A lot of teachers are using Google Classroom to provide feedback. A lot of teachers are doing it digitally on Google Documents. So again, working through best practices in several areas, these listed. And then again, this kind of reiterates what I just said. We need time for this implementation. It can't be all rushed. End of this semester, you got a couple months of summer, and then we implement again for these reasons. Kind of revising assessments, aligning our calculations. PowerSchool is a big deal for us because whatever we choose in terms of grading scales, they need to be able to be implemented into PowerSchool so that a teacher can go into their grade book and use it in an efficient and accurate way.
We've also identified additional systems that we will need to continue to work on. So the grading and assessment team will continue to meet and work throughout next year. And these are some of the systems that we're going to continue to develop with input from departments where appropriate. And John kind of touched on the technology piece, but we will also have to work on making sure that operationally we can support all of this. So we will be working with our tech department to ensure that this can happen. Thankfully, we've already heard from Kate, who is ready and anxious to start the work with us. So we're very excited about that. And then finally, we will have our grading and assessment team will continue to work on developing communication systems that are going to be more visible so that we can always keep our families, students, and everyone informed. For next year, we are going to clarify practices in the syllabi, making sure that those syllabi are linked in PowerSchool, and that we notify parents where to find this information, and if their child is in a class where the teacher is participating in the pilot, that all of that information is outlined in the syllabus. That is it for tonight. Any questions?
I got a bunch. I don't want to jump in right away. Do we have an idea right now about how many teams might be willing to pilot? Like, do you have an inkling? Have people talked to you? Yeah.
So department chairs received a form and that they are completing once course teams say that they're excited about it, but I haven't looked. Have you looked, Charlotte?
I looked this morning and there were 16 responses. So I didn't look at a lot of specifics about what those were, but that's how many responses have come in. Those might be individual teachers, partial course teams, but that's how many responses we had this morning.
Indicates interest. That's good. Can you tell me, do we have any parameters for timely in communication? So is that giving feedback? A student turns in a paper and then we're going to give timely feedback. Does that mean days, weeks? Do we have or do teams define timely?
Yeah, so that was something that we talked about extensively. And we came to the consensus that we're going to allow course teams to define what that means for their course team, because there is, an English teacher who has to grade 100 papers versus, a math teacher who may be able to go through final unit assessments quicker. Like, that's going to vary course to course. But the parameters do request that course teams define that for their course. I don't know if and publish it on the syllabus. If any of you would like to add in.
John, I was interested that you said that the redo policy was something that happened during the pandemic, but we did have teachers that was part of their common practice long before the pandemic. Is that true? Okay, good, because that's going to be one of those things that's going to take some getting used to, and having people in the building that have already done it makes that a much smoother transition.
Yeah, you're right. We've had teachers doing this for a decade, easy. But I think my point was we implemented across the system.
Right.
Coming out of the pandemic.
Yeah. I would like to acknowledge to the teachers that writing additional assessments for people that are redoing things, and you can just be mad that a kid just didn't do something that they said they were going to do, and then you have to create something for that. I feel for you. That is a rough amount of work, and from our end, I cannot speak for the whole board right now, but I'm going to put this out there. We should do whatever we can to provide the time and the resources for teachers to put assessments together. Like you've already said that we've got this staff development ideas lined up, but I would like to be sure that if we have 15 teams of teachers, that we don't say to any of those teams, well, we don't have enough money in our summer curriculum budget. Like, we need to invest in the work that they're doing and give them the time and I dare say the money, but we need to pay them for the time that they're going to spend doing this. So I would just like to, from my point of view, I support the work. I like everything that I saw today. I think that it's really bold and forward, and I applaud you. But I also want to say that we need to give our teachers what they need to make it move.
Did the teachers think some of these changes are harder than others, or were they all kind of at the same level?
Yes. It really depends on what a teacher's doing now. I know that sounds kind of simplistic, but we have some teachers currently using and have been using maybe their whole careers an equidistant scale, so it's not a big leap for them. In other cases, there may be a particular piece of it, there may be a different piece for different teachers. It represents a deep philosophical change. Some teachers, including myself for a long time, had a hard time getting over the fact they have to give credit for somebody who did nothing. Right? I still think that's philosophically the most correct, but I also think that what we've come up with is understandable and also philosophically tenable to me, right? But I had to come to terms with that over time. So yes, it'll vary a lot from teacher to teacher. Some of these things are really easy bars, low-hanging fruit. Others, some people are going to be dragged across the finish line. Some might just retire before they have to.
Add that Gusky would say when he talks about the process, beliefs in this case with grading change after practices, which was the purpose behind the pilot program, is that we wanted people who were interested and excited about it to try it out, so that way we could create that buy-in and then also figure out some of those things of what we would need to do to support teachers before we implemented it district-wide. So that was something that we really thought about.
If we're troubleshooting, let's troubleshoot on a smaller basis rather than on a district-wide basis all at once.
That's a good point.
Smaller trouble.
Maybe the last thing to say there is that when we visited the board a couple of months ago, it was clear when talking to you, this idea of consistency within course teams, right? Like that there's no teacher lottery issue here. Like this kid's experience models this kid's experience in the same course, which is understandable. And I think most teachers are like, yeah, I get it. But the reality is that as we figured out through this process, grading is a deeply personal thing, and teachers all have their own kind of idiosyncrasies and beliefs about how to do that. And so now when we say, oh, and by the way, you, and you all have to do it the same, that's difficult. And understandably, like there's no condemnation there. That's just what it is. That's difficult. And especially if I'm in 3 course teams and they all now are deciding to do things maybe a touch different. Now my system, which I thought was best for me for 25 years, I have 3 different ones and none of them look like the one that I did for 25 years. So I think we're wise to, we're wise to recognize that when we're asking teachers to do these things.
That's why I said bold.
Yeah.
Any other questions for the team?
Actually, I have one more when it came to redos or reassessments. There is a lot of variability that can exist class to class as to what does the retake mean, how much of the grade can you earn back. I hope you're going to look into some of those practices as you go. Sometimes you get 50% of your grade back. Sometimes you get, I'm sure our students will have all the different variations. Is there going to be some effort to look at making that a little more predictable, let's just say?
Well, we'll be collecting feedback from all the pilot participants in all of the parameters, and reassessment is one of them. So we will be digging into all of that when we decide here are the things that we heard a lot about. So we need to come back and readdress and make updates and changes for when we go district-wide. So we hope that we get as many participants as possible, because it is through them that we're going to get the most valuable feedback so that we can set something in place that is going to be what is going to be well received and needed for all of our students.
I think one important point to clarify also is the assessment that we're planning to do from the pilot teachers as well as the students and parents. We will also need to survey people who aren't in the pilot program, because we're going to try and measure the differences, the benefits that students are receiving from being in the course teams. So, we're focusing on the feedback we'll receive from parents or students who are participating, but that will be in comparison to other grading practices that are still going on next year. So if you're a parent and you have a child that has 3 teachers that are in the pilot and 3 teachers who aren't, you will have the opportunity to provide feedback with some of the benefits that you're seeing and some of the challenges that still exist.
And I just want to say thank you to all the teachers. I think, Dawn, as you said, both as a parent and a board member, for any additional work that this is going to create for all of you to benefit our kids. So thank you.
Well said. This is really difficult and important work. And I am so pleased to see those of you here and the people that you represent that have worked with you on the committee, the teachers and the parents. I can't thank you enough.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next on the list is item D, the fiscal year 24 budget update, which is preliminary.
So I gave you a quick memo. We're still on target to have a tentative budget published this Friday, but it's not ready yet. But I gave you the preliminary information as of whatever time last week, and it's already changed because it takes a while once we set a number. It takes a couple days to kind of get it in the system, run the reports, check it, and do all those kinds of things. So we're in process right now. So still on target to do that. So we're almost wrapped up with our decisions. We've made good progress. So when I publish the tentative budget, I'll give you a much more comprehensive update that's very specific into a lot of notes there, but this was just a really big overview to give you a sense of where we're at.
I think these reports are very helpful, as well as your description of what the report is and how it's different from the other ones. Although the format doesn't look any different, I know you're pulling this either from a different platform or a different system.
So Skyward is our system. That's what the reports usually look like. I think they're not very pretty to look at. And so usually what I do is I download the data and I put it in a Google Sheet and I make it prettier. I'm not doing that because that's very time intensive. And so I'm just trying to lean into using the system we have, even though I know it doesn't look quite as nice as I want it to look.
Well,
but I think all the information is there.
I think for the preliminary report, that's absolutely appropriate. And while we do appreciate your very pretty color graphs that make it very digestible for us and members of the community, I think it's very nice to see this preview. Do we have any observations or questions that we want to discuss about this?
Dan had answered mine earlier. I asked about the decrease in federal sources, just to confirm that that's the loss of the COVID relief funds.
And just one
It
thing
was
I
a big
need
enough
to make,
number to
sorry.
stand out. No, go ahead.
Just one other thing to make you aware of. We are looking to publish the tentative budget this Friday. However, the fiscal year 24 budget form is not available yet from ISB. I would be surprised if it's available by Friday. So we very may likely have to use last year's form, but I'll be with bright letters say this is fiscal year 24 data that's in there because we have to use the state form. That's your actual budget form. And it is possible, I don't know yet, I've asked for ISB for a timeline. It's possible we may get to the point where we want to adopt our budget and there's not a published form yet. Because not only do they have to publish it, but then Skyward, it takes a few weeks for Skyward to program it into their system. So stay tuned on the actual budget form, but the numbers will all be there.
Yeah, and our timeline, the state form is not going to be the tail wagging the dog. We are going to observe the timeline that you have set out and continue to improve on these last few years. So thank you.
I had trouble interpreting a couple of numbers, but that may just be because I've been running around too hard. But I'm looking at your prelim review, revenue and high expense, high summary operating funds. So if I look at the grand totals down below, it looks like the revenues grew by 6.77%. That's how I'm reading it. Grand expense totals went up by 3.91%, but then there is a minus 140.55.
Yeah, so
that kind of threw me.
Yeah, that's just a mathematical, that's like a weird, so that column is programmed in the system to basically take the mathematical difference between the 769, which is a positive number, and the 1896 to the left of it, which is a negative number. So to go from a negative number to a positive, you have to multiply it by a negative number. It's weird math. Okay. But that is not something I would. Okay. Yeah, it is weird, but that's not a number of significance.
Thank you. So it's not me. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. So we are now in the for information section of our agenda, and I'll turn it over to Dr. Herman for a superintendent's report.
Right, 3 brief things to share. And Mary Toderick is going to start with just a brief update. We're about halfway through our communications audit, and I wanted to share the progress so far.
Thank you. Yes, we started March 30th with a very aggressive timeline to do a communication audit within 3 months. So we are moving along. We have not missed a deadline. We have done, or I should say the reps from Jiskelka Terman have done 9 leadership interviews, a staff and a parent focus group at each school. We have closed the staff and the parent surveys today. The students will run through the 25th, so last day of this week. And at this point, they have started drafting some of their report related to the pieces that they've already completed, of course. And then the survey company, FACA Research, will be turning over the information for them to plow through all of that data that they receive. But they're very encouraged by the numbers that they're seeing for turnout right now. And when all is said and done and we look at some drafts, we should have the final report delivered to us by July 3rd.
Great. So at the July regular board meeting at the end of the month, we'll be discussing that?
Yes, which will be their results and their recommendations.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you for the update.
Next up, I just wanted to share with the board, I know I gave a presentation at the May 8th meeting, acknowledging staff morale and then talking about some of the action plans that we had scheduled. I copied you on the email, but we did follow up with the staff, again, sharing the recording that was presented as well as the slides. Then I also expanded on each one of the action steps that would be moving forward to, again, try and get more feedback in real time, and to try and make sure that the needs that staff expressed were explicitly being met. One of those things was asking for volunteers to serve on a staff wellness and morale committee, and already have some people volunteering for that. I also did receive several emails over the weekend with positive responses to me sharing that directly with the students, because so many teachers cannot be in this audience or have many other obligations to be able to watch it. But just wanted to make sure the board understood those continuous move forward, and the positive regard we're seeing so far from staff. And then the next thing you might want to give a brief introduction to this. President Hessel attended a option for us to potentially explore some litigation that would be aligned with our value of mental health and wellness for students and the impact that social media is having on that. So I might let you turn it over to the summary, and then Bryant has reviewed this option with our attorneys.
Great, thank you. So I think we know that real harm is being done to youth as a result of some mental health struggles that have been related directly to social media use. So under the public nuisance theory, there is a federal suit that is being filed in the U.S. District Court of California against Meta, Google, TikTok, and Snapchat. Those are the initial defendants. There are potentially others. We know that the social media companies have acknowledged that they're in the business of addiction. And a Meta whistleblower testified that they accomplish the addiction through the use of algorithms, and they make money by how long a user is on the platform. They really need to keep kids on for the longest amount of time, and the answer to doing that is pushing harmful and addictive and divisive content. So the mental health crisis that has been created by the willful harm to our youth, a lot of it is on the school districts, the public schools, to address the mental health concerns. And there is some real resources that we commit to addressing the mental health needs of our students. Some of the examples, body image content being pushed to young females that have been directly linked to eating disorders and suicide. And not only is there willful harm being done, but there's also a failure to warn consumers about the known risks, not just about their algorithms content, but they also in many cases have refused to take user posted content down. So if there's bullying going on or threats being made, there really isn't any way to force the companies to take that content down. So this is not a class action suit. It's a multi-district litigation. It's very similar because every plaintiff files together. It's not a class action, but it gives you a seat at the table if there's a potential settlement, not grouped like a class suit. So I won't bore you with all of the details, but the national firm that is leading the suit is the same one that just successfully sued Jewel for hundreds of millions of dollars. And this case is patterned legally after that suit. The structure of the MDL is considered affirmative action taken by the defendants, which means that the potential immunities by the defendants are not relevant. It's a better vehicle than a class action. And more than monetary relief, this suit is looking for injunctive relief so that the defendants would be forced to address the mental health issues that their algorithms are creating, to actually change the algorithm and not push harmful content, to do real age verification, which they are not doing now, to offer 3 facets of parental controls. Time. Currently, they know that youth users average 7 hours a day. So the parental controls would include time control, who their users could talk to, so not adults, and content control over what they can see. And then finally, it would force open lines of communication between school districts and local law enforcement so that if there was harmful content that was user posted or threats that are user posted, the social media companies would have to work with us and local law enforcement to identify who the user is, where the origin is, and be forced to take it down. So, and then there is also the monetary relief, which would help us pay for the mental health supports and the staffing needs that we have to address it. So the suit is not looking to shut down social media. The suit does not require us to pay anything in legal fees. We would only pay a percentage to the law firm if we were to get monetary compensation. It is an investment in time. There will be a agreed upon survey of information that we would submit. So both the superintendent and the business office and some of our admin team would have to be willing to make the investment to provide information. But in order to participate in this suit, we would need to authorize the resolution to participate and agree to the attorney fee document, which says that we would not owe any legal fees unless there is a judgment in our favor. So there are already 350 school districts in the United States that have signed on to this case just in a month. In the Jewel litigation, they had over 1,000 districts, but that was over the course of a couple of years that they accumulated school districts signing on. So having 350 that have already signed on in the first month is significant. It's going to be a much larger number of plaintiffs expected in this case. So what questions do you have about potentially participating in this litigation?
How did you hear about this?
The law firm Robbins, Franzik, thank you. Franzik sent out an
Part of
email.
They did
A webinar.
a webinar.
They did.
So you watched the
I
webinar.
participated in the webinar.
Okay.
And then
I wanted to participate in the webinar, but I was not able.
So I have the slides
Oh, good.
that they shared, which I would be
Okay.
happy to send you and anyone else who is interested in taking a look at them.
And the national law firms out of San Diego, France, not to be confused with
Franzik.
Then Franzik is a local co-counsel. We don't work with Franzik because we work with a couple other law firms, but they are highly recommended educational attorneys. And I know many of them on the firm because they present quite a bit. I talked to John Fester, our attorney, quickly. And with that, he didn't want to dive into all the, paperwork. Otherwise, we're spending money. But he said it's very similar to what he saw as the Jewel, and so if that's something that, we wanted him to invest more time into reading through it. But again, Franzik has invested, their time. And I know there are other local school districts on the North Shore that are signing up for
Right.
this.
I was able to speak with the North Suburban superintendents last week, and a few of them, I should say, had signed on to the Jewel lawsuit and are now receiving compensation. They didn't share how much, but they thought that the process that this firm delivered in terms of not being duly time-consuming or something like that, that they were anticipating joining this second lawsuit, as they are seeing some of the same challenges we are with providing mental health supports for students directly and indirectly from social media.
And it seems to me that somebody has to hold social media companies accountable for the willful harm that they're doing. This isn't a coincidental downside that nobody could have anticipated. They really do know about the harm that they're doing. And unless somebody holds them accountable, it's not going to change. So wanted to sort of take the temperature of the board to see, is this something we want to pursue?
When you did the webinar, was there any indication that there's a downside as far as a counterclaim against the plaintiffs?
There is no downside about a counterclaim. There was a question that was asked about retaliation. So for example, our communications department does use social media to communicate with our stakeholders. And there are platforms that are very capable of deprioritizing our posts, because in many cases we don't pay for them. So they can do with our posts whatever they want. Because there is a dedicated judge, if there is any smell of retaliation, the plaintiffs can ask for an injunction, which they expect would not be hard to get against the companies. So that was the only potential downside that was identified.
I would strongly support.
When Lisa described it, it just aligned so well with the data we received last spring from our goal selection, where the number one goal identified by both our staff and our parents and community was mental health and wellness. It scored the top in both. And so I felt not only is this like a national citizen right, but it definitely aligns with the values and priorities of our constituents.
I think the other thing that I spent some time marinating on and discussing with Dr. Herman was, is this political? Because I have a strong commitment to keep us out of those conversations. We've done an outstanding job as a board of not letting that creep in to our discussions and our decisions. And I don't think that this is, but if there's anyone that sees it differently, I'm open to that.
I think mental health is becoming less and less a politically polarizing topic. I think, we're at a place now where we weren't maybe 10 years ago, and the implications of social media and the damage it causes is so far reaching in our society that, to me, this would be like, us hearing about the effects of smoking, and saying, is this political? It's kind of, at this point, accepted fact very widely. So I totally hear the concern. I just genuinely don't feel that way at all.
Sophia, did you have a question or a comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that first off, I'm really glad that this is becoming an emerging conversation, because even like every day talking to my peers, mental health is something that I see as a problem. I mean, for example, I have like an increasing amount of friends who are being diagnosed with depression, anxiety, ADHD. A couple months ago, I ran across this study by the same whistleblower from Facebook/Meta. And the research revealed that 1 in 3, I believe it was 1 in 3 girls who are consistently being exposed to Instagram content are experiencing depression or body image issues, which is very telling. And I think that as a school, we have to be responsive to that, because at some point it can interfere with one's ability to thrive academically.
That's a good point. Thank you. So it sounds like we have, we don't have any major concerns or obstacles in terms of participating. So I'm wondering from an admin perspective, how you would feel about putting this on the June meeting schedule as an action item to, I don't think we have to vote. I think we have to come to consensus on the resolution. Is that correct? Procedurally?
You'll need to vote on the resolution.
It would be an action item to vote on. Cara, did you have a question?
So I want to make sure, so the attorney, if there is recovery, the attorneys receive 25% plus fees, expenses, and time.
Correct.
Right? So, and then the districts separate or portion out the remainder of any monetary reward.
That's correct.
Okay. But the main gist is to try to change industry standards.
Yes. That is correct, because they have experimented on our kids and nobody knew what the result of the experiment was going to be. But now we know. We know. So unless somebody puts a stop to it, it will not stop. And I feel like we have a responsibility to hold these social media companies accountable. So thank you. Anything else on this before we move on?
Thanks for uncovering it. That's huge.
I'd like to keep item B, board comments and events, somewhat brief unless there's something we need to discuss. It is getting rather late. We do not have a CEDAL or an ISB report. I'm not aware of any other reports that we need to discuss. Future agenda items that are not listed on the public content section. So I have one that I would like to add. We talked about possibly identifying a platform for a project map of all of the projects that are going on in the district so that everybody has easy access to see what's on the plate and who's participating, what the milestones are, what the timelines are. So if we could have that for committee next.
We have the content. It's been a lot time consuming to find the right tool, but we will be ready to bring maybe a few samples for the board to view and give us feedback on.
Will that include how much professional development time you estimate each one of these projects would require?
Yes, that would be one of the sort of layers of it. It would be one of the things that we talked about was on our action plan, there's work that committees are doing that's sort of behind the scene. Then there's actual implementation of changes that might really hit the classroom or teacher practice. And then there's that third layer of professional learning.
Okay.
So we'll map all three layers.
Thank you.
Any other future agenda items? Okay, then if we could have a move to convene in closed session for the purpose of discussing employment of an employee under 5 ILCS 120/2C1 and collective negotiating matters 5 ILCS 120/2C2.
Carmichael, so moved.
Rooney, second.
Roll call, please.
Kulkarni.
Aye.
Rooney.
Aye.
Benjamin.
Aye.
Carmichael.
Aye.
Drumkey.
Aye.
Hessel.
Aye, we are convened at 10:18. We will take a 5-minute bio break, and I am grateful to everyone for your stamina that was required to get to this point in the evening. May I have a motion and a second to return to open session, please?
Carmichael, so moved.
Benjamin, second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We are convened in open session. May we have a motion and second to adjourn?
Drumkey, motion to adjourn.
Rooney, second.
At 10:47, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned.